The marble floors of the High Court gleamed under the afternoon sun, polished to such perfection that Franklin Gray could see his own reflection staring back at him. 17 years he'd walked these halls, 17 years of service to the crown, to the pack law, to justice itself. His robes deep burgundy trimmed with silver, the colors of the king's chosen judges whispered against the stone as he made his way toward the council chamber. Everything was exactly as it should be, except for the envelope. Damien paused at the entrance to his private office, his hand hovering over the brass handle. There, slipped beneath his door, was a cream-colored envelope. Nothing unusual about that, he received correspondence daily. But this one had no seal, no marking, no indication of who had delivered it, or when. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. The paper was expensive, heavy stock that spoke of wealth and status, but it was blank, completely blank. Judge Ashford? Damien turned to find Ella, one of the junior court clerks, approaching with a stack of documents. Her smile was bright, innocent. The council meeting starts in 15 minutes. Chief Justice Aldrich sent me to remind you. Of course. Damien slipped the envelope into his inner pocket, returning her smile. Tell the Chief Justice I'll be there momentarily. She nodded and hurried away, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Damien watched her go, that small, uncomfortable feeling gnawing at the edge of his consciousness. The feeling that something was wrong. But what? An unmarked envelope? He received dozens of anonymous tips every month. This was nothing. He pushed open his office door and stepped inside. His sanctuary was exactly as he'd left it that morning, law books lining every wall from floor to ceiling, his desk organized with military precision, the afternoon light streaming through the tall windows that overlooked the capital city of Valdres. From this height, he could see the entire sprawl of the kingdom. The merchant quarter, with its colorful awnings. The residential districts where both humans and wolves lived in careful harmony. And beyond that, the dark line of the Thornwood Forest, where the rogue wolves made their home. Damien had never understood rogues. Wolves who rejected the pack structure, who turned their backs on the Alpha King's protection and law. It seemed like madness to him. Without the pack, what was a wolf? Just an animal. Alone. Vulnerable. He shook his head and turned his attention to the envelope. Might as well open it before the meeting. He broke the seal. There was no wax, just a simple adhesive, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. They're going to kill you tonight. Don't go to the council meeting. Trust no one in the High Court. Run. The words were handwritten in sharp, angular script. No signature, no explanation. Damien read it twice, then a third time. Then he did what he always did. With anonymous threats, he crumpled the paper and tossed it into the waste bin beside his desk. In 17 years as a judge, he'd received hundreds of threats. Defendants who didn't like their verdicts, criminals who wanted revenge, conspiracy theorists who believed the entire justice system was corrupt. This was nothing new, nothing credible. He had 10 minutes before the council meeting. He used them to review his notes on the afternoon's agenda: 3 land disputes, a treaty negotiation with the Southern Pacts, and a routine review of the Guard's budget allocation. Standard fare. Boring, even. Looking back, Damien would realize this was the moment when everything changed, the moment when the careful, ordered world he'd built came crashing down around him. But in that moment, it felt like every other Tuesday. The council chamber was already full when Damien arrived. 12 seats arranged in a circle, each occupied by one of the High Court's senior officials. Chief Justice Aldrich presided from the north-facing seat, his silver hair and stern expression commanding immediate respect. To his right sat Lady Morgana, the king's treasurer. To his left, Commander Gideon of the Royal Guard. And there, directly across from Damien's own seat, was Lord Victor Castellan, the king's closest advisor, the man who had mentored Damien when he'd first joined the High Court nearly 2 decades ago. The man Damien trusted more than anyone in the kingdom. Victor caught his eye and smiled, warm, familiar, the smile of a friend. Damien returned it as he took his seat. Now that we're all present, Chief Justice Aldrich began, his voice carrying easily through the circular chamber. Let us begin with the matter of the Southern Territories. Damien's attention drifted. He'd read the briefing documents. 3 packs were disputing hunting rights in the borderlands. Standard territorial nonsense that could be resolved with a simple redistribution of, which is why we must accelerate the timeline. Damien's focus snapped back. What timeline? He glanced down at his notes, but there was nothing about any timeline. He must have missed something. Lady Morgana was speaking now. The king grows impatient. He wants the Thornwood cleared by the new moon. That gives us less than 3 weeks. Cleared? Damien heard himself ask. I wasn't aware we had any operations planned for the Thornwood. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to him. Commander Gideon cleared his throat. It's in the budget allocation, Judge Ashford. Section 7, Paragraph 3. Damien flipped through his documents. Section 7 was about guard funding, yes, but Paragraph 3 simply listed a discretionary expense of 50,000 gold sovereigns. No explanation. No. Perhaps Judge Ashford would be more comfortable discussing this matter in private, Lord Victor said smoothly. Given his concerns about procedure. There was something in Victor's tone. Something that made the hair on the back of Damien's neck stand up. No, Damien said carefully. I'd prefer to discuss it here, in open council, as is proper. What exactly are we clearing from the Thornwood? Another silence. This one heavier. Dangerous. Chief Justice Aldrich folded his hands on the table. The rogues, Judge Ashford. We're clearing the rogues, all of them. The words hung in the air like smoke. That's... Damien struggled to find the right words. That's a military operation, a potential massacre. We can't simply exterminate an entire population without due process, without what? Lady Morgana's voice was sharp. Without giving lawless criminals a trial. They rejected pack law. They rejected the king's authority. They have no rights under our justice system. They're still citizens of this kingdom. Damien's voice was rising now, his carefully maintained composure cracking. They're still wolves. We can't just... The king has signed the order. Victor's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. It's done, Damien. The only question now is implementation. Damien stared at his mentor. At the man who had taught him everything he knew about justice, about mercy, about the rule of law. You can't be serious. Victor, this is genocide. This is necessity. Victor's expression didn't change. The rogues have been a thorn in the kingdom's side for too long. They harbor criminals. They reject taxation. They represent chaos in an ordered society. The king has decided they must be dealt with, and we are his instruments. I won't be part of this. Damien stood, his chair scraping against the marble floor. I won't. Sit down, Judge Ashford. The command came from Commander Gideon, and it wasn't a request. Around the chamber, Damien saw the other council members watching him with cold, calculating eyes. Not the faces of colleagues, the faces of predators. How had he not seen it before? I need to speak with the king directly, Damien said, his mind racing. This order, if it's real, I need to hear it from him myself. That won't be possible, Chief Justice Aldrich said. His Majesty is indisposed. The way he said it, the slight emphasis on indisposed. The way Lady Morgana and Victor exchanged a look. Oh gods, what did you do? Damien's voice was barely a whisper. We did what was necessary, Victor said, rising from his seat. What has always been necessary. The Alpha King was weak, Damien. Too concerned with rights and due process, and obsolete notions of justice. He would have let the rogues fester, until they threatened the entire kingdom. We couldn't allow that. You killed him. The words fell from Damien's mouth like stones. You killed the king. We liberated the kingdom, Lady Morgana corrected. And tomorrow, when we announce His Majesty's tragic illness, the council will assume temporary leadership. By the time anyone questions it, the Thornwood will be ashes, and every rogue in the kingdom will be dead, clean. Final, just. Damien's hand moved to his pocket, to the communication stone that would alert the royal guard, but Commander Gideon was already shaking his head. The guard answers to me, Damien. They have for years. Why do you think this was so easy? They'd planned this. For how long? Months? Years? How many of the decisions he'd supported, The rulings he'd made had been part of this conspiracy. You were supposed to be with us. Victor's voice held genuine regret. We thought you understood. Thought you'd see reason when the time came. But I see now that your idealism runs too deep. Which means, Chief Justice Aldrich said, standing, you represent a problem. The doors to the council chamber burst open. 6 royal guards poured in, their weapons drawn. Not to protect the council. To arrest him. Damien ran. He didn't think. Didn't plan. Pure instinct took over as he dove sideways, toppling his chair into the path of the nearest guard. His hand grabbed a heavy law book from the shelf behind him, and he hurled it at the window, the massive floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the city. The glass exploded outward in a shower of crystalline shards. Stop him! Victor's voice roared behind him. But Damien was already moving. He jumped, 4 stories, onto a sloped roof, rolling, sliding, barely catching himself on a drainage pipe. His judge's robes tore away, leaving him in his shirt and trousers as he scrambled down the pipe, his hands burning, his heart hammering against his ribs. Shouts above him. The whistle of crossbow bolts. One slammed into the wall inches from his head. He dropped the last 10 feet, hitting the cobblestones hard enough to knock the wind from his lungs. But he couldn't stop, couldn't breathe, could only run. Through the market square. Into the narrow alleys. Behind buildings and through courtyards. His mind screamed at him. Where are you going? What's your plan? They control the guard. They control the court. They control everything. A hand grabbed his arm and yanked him sideways into a shadowed doorway. Don't. Speak. The voice was rough, low, unmistakably female. A hand clamped over his mouth before he could protest. Damien's wolf instincts surged. He was stronger than most. Faster. He could fight whoever. Don't move. Don't even breathe loud. The woman's body pressed against his back, pinning him against the brick wall. She smelled like pine and smoke and something wild. Not a city wolf, not pack. Rogue. Footsteps pounded past the alley entrance, voices shouting orders. Went this way. Check every building. Alive if possible, dead if necessary. The woman's hand tightened over his mouth. Her other hand held something cold and sharp against his ribs. A knife. They stood frozen for what felt like an eternity. Damien could feel her heart beating against his back, steady and controlled. His own was racing like a drum. His entire world had shattered in less than an hour. Everything he believed, everyone he'd trusted. They're going to kill you. The woman whispered against his ear. You understand that, right? Whatever you saw, whatever you know, you're a dead man. The footsteps faded. The shouts grew distant. The woman pulled back, removing her hand from his mouth but keeping the knife ready. Damien turned to face her. She was younger than he'd expected. Mid-20s, maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a practical braid and eyes that gleamed gold in the shadows. Wolf eyes. She wore leather and practical traveling clothes, and she looked at him with an expression that was half annoyance, half curiosity. You're a judge, she said, eyeing his torn clothing, the remnants of his formal attire. One of the king's own. Was, Damien corrected, his voice hoarse. I think I just lost that position, along with your life, if you keep standing around in the open. She grabbed his arm again, surprisingly strong, and started pulling him deeper into the alley. Come on, before they circle back. Wait. Damien planted his feet. Who are you? Why are you helping me? The woman turned, and in the dim light, he saw her expression clearly for the first time. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't warm. It was the look of someone who'd made a calculation and come to a conclusion they didn't particularly like. I'm not helping you, she said flatly. I'm stopping the royal guard from spilling blood in my territory. Big difference. Now move, or I'll let them find you after all. But she didn't let go of his arm. And despite everything, despite the betrayal, the conspiracy, the death sentence hanging over his head, Damien found himself following this strange rogue wolf deeper into the shadows of Valdris. Behind them, the shouts grew louder. The hunt had begun. Chapter 2. Alone and hunted. The woman moved through the back alleys of Valdris like she owned them, No hesitation, no wrong turns. Just fluid, confident motion that spoke of someone who knew these streets better than the cobblestones themselves. Damien struggled to keep up. His lungs burned. His hands were scraped raw from the drainage pipe, and he was pretty sure he'd cracked at least one rib in the fall. But every time he slowed, the woman's grip on his arm tightened, pulling him forward. "Where are we going?" he managed between gasps. "Away from the people trying to kill you," she said without looking back. "Keep moving." They ducked under a low archway, through what looked like someone's private courtyard, over a wall, and into another narrow passage. The sounds of pursuit had faded, but Damien knew it was temporary. Commander Gideon had the entire royal guard at his disposal. Hundreds of trained soldiers, trackers, wolves with enhanced senses who could follow a scent trail through a rainstorm. "They'll find me," Damien said, more to himself than to her. "They control everything. The guard, the court, If you're going to panic, do it quietly." The woman stopped so abruptly that Damien nearly crashed into her. She spun to face him, those gold eyes blazing with irritation. "Every word out of your mouth is a risk. Sound carries in these alleys, so unless you want to advertise our location, I suggest you learn to shut up." Damien's jaw clenched. He'd spent 17 years being treated with respect, deference even, being addressed as "Your Honor" or "Judge Ashford." And now this rogue, this stranger was ordering him around like a common criminal. But she was right. He knew she was right. And that made it worse. "Fine," he bit out. "Good. Now come on, we're not safe yet." They kept moving. The architecture changed as they went deeper into the city's underbelly, the polished marble and pristine stonework of the government district giving way to older buildings, crumbling brick, narrow streets that hadn't seen maintenance in decades. This was the forgotten part of Valdres, the part that Damien had only ever seen from his office window, never visited, never thought about. His side was starting to hurt badly. Each breath sent a sharp lance of pain through his ribs. He pressed his hand against it, felt something warm and wet. Blood. When had he? The window. He must have caught himself on the broken glass during his escape. "Stop." The woman's voice was sharp. She'd noticed him faltering. Her eyes dropped to his side, to the spreading red stain on his white shirt. "How bad?" "How bad? I'm fine. That wasn't a request for your opinion." "How bad?" Damien pulled his hand away, looked at the blood coating his palm, more than he'd expected. "I don't know. I can keep moving. Not if you bleed out. You can't." She swore under her breath a creative string of profanity that would have made the court clerks faint. Of course. Because saving your ungrateful ass wasn't complicated enough. She grabbed his arm again, but gentler this time, and led him toward a building that looked ready to collapse. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Inside was dark, dusty, clearly abandoned. "Sit," she ordered, pointing to a relatively clean patch of floor. "I can." "Sit down." Damien sat. The moment he stopped moving, the adrenaline began to drain away, and the pain rushed in to fill the space it left. His entire body ached. His hands were shaking. The reality of what had just happened was starting to crash over him in waves. Victor had killed the king, his mentor, his friend. The man who had taught him that law meant something, that justice was more than just words on paper. How long had Victor been planning this? How many times had Damien sat across from him, discussed cases, shared meals, trusted his counsel, while Victor was plotting regicide? "Hey." The woman snapped her fingers in front of his face. "Stay with me, Judge. I need you conscious." She knelt beside him, pulling a small pack from her shoulder. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, producing bandages, a flask of something that smelled like alcohol, a needle and thread. "This is going to hurt," she said, not unkindly. "I'm aware of how wound treatment." Damien's words cut off in a sharp hiss as she poured the alcohol directly onto the gash. Stars exploded across his vision. "Gods above, woman. I said it would hurt. Now hold still." She lifted his shirt, exposing the wound. It was a clean slice, not too deep, but long enough to need stitches. Her fingers probed the edges with surprising gentleness. "You're lucky," she murmured. "Missed anything vital. But you're going to have a nice scar. Lucky. Right. Damien laughed. But it came out bitter. I've just lost everything. My position. My life's work. The people I trusted most just tried to kill me. But yes, I'm very lucky. The woman looked up at him then, really looked, and something in her expression softened. Just for a moment. You're alive. In my experience, that's luckier than most people get. She threaded the needle. Damien watched her hands, scarred, calloused, but steady. Not the hands of someone who lived in comfortable society. These were hands that had worked, fought, survived. This is really going to hurt, she said again. Just do it. The first stitch burned like fire. Damien bit down on his tongue to keep from crying out. The second was worse. By the third, he was gripping the floor hard enough to scrape his already raw palms. Why are you helping me? He asked through gritted teeth. Anything to distract from the pain. You said I was a judge, one of the king's own. You're a rogue. We're supposed to be enemies. We are enemies. She tied off a stitch, started another. Or we were. Seems like you just got fired from that particular job. Then why? Because the royal guard killed someone in my territory 3 months ago. Her voice went flat, cold. 17-year-old kid. His crime? Stealing bread to feed his younger siblings. The guards didn't bother with arrest, didn't bother with trial, just put a crossbow bolt through his heart and left him bleeding in the street. Damien felt something cold settle in his stomach. I didn't know. No. You didn't. Because people like you never know. You sit in your marble halls and make your rulings, and never bother to see what happens when those rulings hit the streets. She tied off the last stitch with perhaps more force than necessary. But I saw. I see it every day, so forgive me if I'm not crying over the fact that the High Court is eating itself. The words stung worse than the needle. Because she was right. Damien had spent 17 years believing he was serving justice, but what had he really been doing? Upholding a system that had just murdered its own king to carry out genocide. A system that killed children for stealing bread. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what happened to that boy, for all of it. The woman sat back on her heels, studying him with those unsettling gold eyes. Your apology doesn't bring him back, doesn't feed his siblings, doesn't change anything. I know, but... She sighed, wiping the blood off her hands with a rag. I suppose it's more than any other judge has ever said to me. So, there's that. Silence fell between them. Outside, the sounds of the city continued, distant voices, the clatter of carts, the ever-present background noise of life going on while Damien's world fell apart. They're going to kill everyone in the Thornwood, he said. That's what the council was planning. A complete extermination. In less than 3 weeks. The woman's head snapped up. What? The rogues. All of them. They have 50,000 gold sovereigns allocated for the operation. Commander Gideon controls the guard. It's already decided. For the first time since he'd met her, the woman looked genuinely shaken. That's hundreds of people, families, children. I know. And I'm the only one outside the council who knows about it. Damien met her eyes. That's why they want me dead. Not just because I witnessed the truth about the king, because I can expose their genocide before they carry it out. The woman stood abruptly, pacing the small space like a caged animal. This is insane. Even for the High Court, this is... She stopped. Wait, you said less than 3 weeks? By the new moon. That's 18 days. She ran her hands through her hair, dislodging her braid. We need to get word to the Thornwood. They need to evacuate. They need to... Evacuate where? Damien struggled to his feet, ignoring the pull of fresh stitches. The kingdom's borders are controlled by the same guard that will be carrying out the massacre. And even if they could escape, where would they go? The neighboring territories have treaties with the crown. They'd just send them back. Then what? The woman spun to face him. We just let it happen? Let hundreds of people die? No. Damien's voice was harder now. Some of his old authority returning. We stop it. We expose the council's conspiracy. We prove what they've done, what they're planning to do. We tear down their legitimacy before they can carry out their plan. And how exactly do you propose we do that? You're a fugitive. I'm a rogue. We have no authority, no resources, no. We have the truth. Damien stepped closer. And the truth is the most powerful weapon in any legal system, even a corrupt one. If we can get proof to the right people, allies in the outer provinces, judges who aren't compromised, military commanders who still serve the actual law, we can turn the kingdom against them. The woman stared at him. You actually believe that? You actually think the system can save itself? I think the system is made of people. And most people, when given a choice between genocide and justice, will choose justice. Most people sat by and watched that 17-year-old bleed out in the street. The words hit like a slap, because she was right. Damien had been naive, had believed in the inherent goodness of the system for so long that he'd been blind to its rot. But what was the alternative? Give up? Let the massacre happen? You're right, he said. I've been blind. I've been complicit in a broken system. I can't change that. But I can change what happens next. I can try to stop this, even if it costs me everything I have left. The woman studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed short, sharp, without humor. You know what the really stupid part is? I believe you. I actually believe that you're dumb enough to try this. Then help me. Why would I do that? Because you care about those people in the Thornwood. Because you just spent the last hour saving my life and stitching me back together instead of leaving me for the guard. Because whatever you say, you're not as cynical as you pretend to be. She scowled at him. I could still leave you for the guard, but you won't. A beat of silence. Then, damn it, she turned away, but Damien saw the ghost of a smile. Fine, but we do this my way, my rules, my territory, my knowledge, my contacts. You want to expose a conspiracy? We can't do it from inside your precious system. We do it from the shadows, from the places people like you never look. Agreed. And you do exactly what I say. Question me, doubt me, try to pull rank on me, and I walk. I leave you bleeding in whatever alley we happen to be in at the time. Understand? Understood. She turned back to face him, and for the first time, she offered her hand. Maggie. My name is Maggie. Damien took it. Her grip was firm, calloused, strong. Damien Ashford, though I suppose I'm not Judge Ashford anymore. No, Maggie agreed. You're just Damien now. Welcome to the bottom, Your Honor. It's not as glamorous as the High Court. I'm noticing that. A sound from outside voices, getting closer. Both of them tensed. We need to move, Maggie said quietly. They're sweeping the district. We can't stay here. Where do we go? She gave him a look that was equal parts resignation and determination. Somewhere they'll never think to look for a judge. The Thornwood. That's suicide. That's where they're planning to, which is exactly why they won't search for you there. Not yet. Not until they're ready to move. She moved to the door, peering out into the street. Besides, if we're going to stop this, we need to warn the rogues, and we need their help. They'll never trust me. Probably not. Maggie glanced back at him, a dangerous smile playing at her lips. But they trust me. And you're with me now. So you better hope that's enough. She slipped out into the street. After a moment's hesitation, 17 years of law and order warring with the new reality of survival, Damien followed. The hunt continued. But now, at least, he wasn't running alone. And somewhere in the back of his mind, past the pain and the fear, and the crushing weight of betrayal, a small voice whispered, "This woman just saved your life. Don't forget that. Whatever happens next, she's the only reason you're still breathing." He didn't know it yet, but that thought would become important, very important. But first, they had to survive the night. Chapter 3. The Journey into Shadow. They traveled under cover of darkness. Maggie led them through parts of Valdris that Damien hadn't known existed, forgotten tunnels beneath the city streets, abandoned warehouses, the skeletal remains of old construction projects that had been started and never finished. She moved with the confidence of someone who had mapped every shadow, every hiding place, every escape route. Damien tried to keep up. His side throbbed with each step, the fresh stitches pulling tight. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool night air, but he didn't complain, didn't ask for rest, because every time they paused, every time they slowed, he heard it in the distance, the systematic sweep of the Royal Guard, searching, hunting. "There's a safe house on the eastern edge of the city," Maggie whispered as they crouched in the shadow of a crumbling aqueduct. "We can rest there for a few hours. Let the search move past us. Then we make for the Thornwood at dawn. Won't they have the gates watched? We're not using the gates." She glanced at him, a hint of amusement in those gold eyes. "You really don't know anything about how this city actually works, do you? I knew the law. You knew the story they told you, the clean version. The version where everything makes sense and justice prevails and the system works." Maggie shook her head. "The real city? The one beneath all that polish? You've never seen it." She was right. Again, Damien had spent 17 years looking at Valdres from above, literally and figuratively. From his office window, from the High Court, from a position of privilege and power, he'd never walked these streets, never breathed this air that smelled of desperation and survival. "I'm starting to realize that," he said quietly. Maggie studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Come on, we're close." The safe house turned out to be a room above an abandoned tannery, accessible only by a rusted fire escape that looked ready to collapse at any moment. Inside was sparse, a bedroll, some supplies, a few weapons mounted on the wall, but it was dry, hidden, and most importantly, defensible. Maggie barred the door behind them, then moved to the single window, checking the street below. Satisfied, she finally allowed herself to relax just slightly. Her shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch, her hand moved away from the knife at her belt. "Sit," she said. "Let me check those stitches." "I'm fine." "That wasn't a request, Damien." She pulled out a small lantern, lighting it with a match. The warm glow filled the space, casting long shadows on the walls. "You've been bleeding through your shirt for the last hour. So sit down and let me look at it, or I'll knock you down and look at it anyway." Damien sat. He was too tired to argue, and besides, the pain had been getting worse. Maybe she was right, maybe. Shirt off. He hesitated. Something about the command, about the intimacy of it, made him suddenly aware of how small this space was, how alone they were, how close she was standing. "Damien, shirt off." He unbuttoned his shirt, what was left of it, anyway, and pulled it away from the wound. The fabric stuck to the dried blood, making him hiss. Maggie knelt beside him, her hands surprisingly gentle as she examined the stitches. "You pulled 2 of them." "Idiot. I told you to be careful." "You told me to keep moving." I told you to keep moving carefully." She produced her needle and thread again. "This is going to hurt." "Yes, I remember." She almost smiled. Almost. Quick learner. The restitching was worse than the first time. Maybe because the adrenaline had fully worn off now. Maybe because Damien knew what was coming. Each pull of the thread felt like fire dragging through his flesh. He focused on his breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, just like he'd learned in combat training decades ago. "You were military," Maggie observed, watching his controlled breathing. "Before you were a judge. 6 years, infantry, then officer training. I thought I'd make a career of it. What changed? I realized I was better at strategy than combat. Better at thinking than fighting. Victor." The name caught in his throat. Lord Castellan noticed. "Recommended me for the judicial training program. Said, I had a mind for law. He was your mentor. It wasn't a question." "Yes." And now he's trying to kill you." "Yes." Maggie tied off the final stitch. "That's the thing about mentors. They teach you how to see the world. And if they're corrupt, they teach you to see corruption as normal, as necessary." She sat back, wiping her hands. "You were lucky. You saw through it before it was too late." "Was I?" Damien looked at her. "I spent 17 years upholding a system that murdered children for stealing bread. I sat in judgment of people, while the very men I served conspired to commit genocide. How is that lucky? Because you're here now, because you saw the truth and ran instead of joining them." Maggie stood, moving to the small supply cache in the corner. She pulled out some dried meat, hard bread, a skin of water. That's more than most people in your position would have done. She handed him the food. Damien stared at it for a moment, realizing he couldn't remember the last time he'd eaten. Breakfast? That felt like a lifetime ago. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet. This is the easy part. They ate in silence. The bread was stale, the meat tough, the water lukewarm. It was possibly the worst meal Damien had ever had. But somehow, sitting in this abandoned room with a rogue wolf who had saved his life, it felt more honest than any of the elaborate dinners he'd attended in the high court. Tell me about the Thornwood, Damien said eventually. If we're going there, I need to know what to expect. Maggie leaned back against the wall, her eyes distant. It's not what you think. Not what they tell you in the city. They call us rogues like we're criminals, like we rejected pack law because we're animals. But most of the people in the Thornwood? She shook her head. They're refugees. People who didn't fit the kingdom's neat little boxes. Wolves who couldn't afford the pack taxes. Humans who married wolves and got exiled for it. Children born to mixed families. The sick. The different. The inconvenient. How many? Last count? Maybe 400. Spread across a dozen small settlements in the forest. We have rules. Structure. It's not chaos, no matter what your high court believes. But no central authority. No alpha. No. Maggie's voice hardened. We tried that once. Had a leader, someone strong enough to unite the settlements. The crown sent assassins, killed him and his entire family. After that, we learned, no central leadership, no single target, just communities, people helping people. Damien processed that. That's why the council wants you eliminated. Not because you're dangerous to the kingdom, because you're proof that their system isn't necessary. Maggie looked at him with something that might have been respect. Now you're starting to understand. They can't allow an alternative to exist. Can't let people see that wolves can survive, can thrive outside pack law. Damien felt the pieces clicking together. This massacre isn't about security. It's about control. About eliminating evidence that their way isn't the only way. Give the judge a prize. But there was no mockery in Maggie's voice. Just weary acknowledgement. You're learning fast. Not fast enough. Damien stood, moving to the window. Below, the city was quiet. But he knew the guard was out there, searching. We have 18 days to stop them, and we have no proof, no authority, no resources. How do we even start? We start by surviving until dawn. Then we get to the Thornwood and warn them. Maggie joined him at the window. After that, we figure out who in your precious system isn't compromised. Someone must have questioned the king's sudden illness. Someone must have noticed the massive guard redeployment. The outer provinces, Damien said slowly. The lords who govern the territories outside the capital. They're not part of the high court. They answer directly to the crown, not the council. So, if we can get proof to them, they have the authority to challenge the council, to demand investigations, to refuse orders. Damien turned to face her. But we need evidence. We need documentation of the conspiracy, of the assassination, of the planned massacre. The council would never be stupid enough to leave that lying around. Maggie was quiet for a moment. Then, what if they didn't think it was stupid? What if they thought they were completely safe? What do you mean? You said Victor was your mentor, that he trusted you, thought you'd join them eventually. She met his eyes. Would he have kept records? Plans? Things he might have shown you once you were ready to understand? Damien's mind raced. Victor's private office in the high court. The locked cabinet where he kept sensitive documents. How many times had Damien seen him pull files from there? Seen the elaborate lock mechanism? Never thought twice about it because Victor had nothing to hide from a loyal student. His office, Damien breathed. Gods, he kept everything there. Every conspiracy, every plan, probably documented in detail because Victor always believed in maintaining proper records. Even for treason. Can you get in? It's in the high court, the most heavily guarded building in the kingdom. And by now, they'll have my description posted everywhere. Every guard, every servant, I didn't ask if it would be easy. I asked if you could do it. Damien looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who had saved him, stitched him up, fed him, trusted him with the truth about her people. This rogue, who had every reason to hate him, and everything he represented. Yes, he said. But I can't do it alone. Good thing you're not alone anymore. Maggie pushed away from the window. We rest for 3 hours. Then we move for the Thornwood. Once you've warned my people, once they're preparing to evacuate or defend themselves, we come back. We break into the High Court. We get those documents. And we burn Victor's entire conspiracy to the ground. That's insane. You have a better plan? Damien didn't. When we break into the High Court and they catch us, they won't arrest us. They'll kill us. Both of us. You understand that? I've been understanding that since the moment I pulled you into that alley. Maggie moved to the bedroll, settling down onto it. Now stop talking and get some rest. You're going to need it. There's only one bedroll. Then I guess we're sharing. Unless you want to sleep on the floor with those fresh stitches. Damien hesitated. The proper thing, the appropriate thing, would be to insist on the floor, maintain some semblance of… What? Decorum? Propriety? Those concepts felt absurd now, in this moment, in this place. He lay down beside her, careful to leave distance between them. The bedroll was thin, barely padding them from the hard floor. But after everything, it felt like luxury. Maggie? Why did you really save me? The truth. Silence. Long enough that Damien thought she wouldn't answer. Then, because I'm tired of watching people die while the court does nothing. Because that 17-year-old kid looked at me while he bled out and asked me why nobody helped him. Asked me why nobody cared. Her voice was barely a whisper. And I didn't have an answer. But maybe if I save one judge who actually gives a damn, maybe next time someone asks me that question, I'll have something to say. Damien turned his head to look at her. In the dim lantern light, her profile was sharp, determined. But there was something vulnerable in her expression, something that spoke of old pain, old failures, old ghosts that haunted her. What was his name? Damien asked quietly. The boy who died. Eliam. His name was Eliam. Maggie closed her eyes. He had 2 younger sisters, 7 and 9 years old. After he died, I made sure they got to the Thornwood safely, made sure they had food, shelter, someone to look after them. It doesn't fix anything, doesn't bring him back. But it's something. You gave them a chance. That's not nothing. It's not enough. No, Damien agreed. It's never enough. But it's what we have. It's what we do with the time we're given. Maggie opened her eyes, turning to look at him. They were close now, close enough that he could see the flecks of amber in her gold irises, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. You're not what I expected, she said. What did you expect? Someone colder, more arrogant, more judge-like. She almost smiled. But you're just a person. A person who got caught in something bigger than themselves and is trying to do the right thing. Trying and succeeding are different things. True. But trying is the first step. She reached out, and for a moment, Damien thought she might touch his face. But instead, she extinguished the lantern, plunging them into darkness. Sleep, Damien. Tomorrow we start a war. Against the most powerful institution in the kingdom. Those are the only wars worth fighting. Damien closed his eyes. He should have been terrified. Should have been second-guessing every decision that had led him to this moment. But instead, lying in the darkness next to this fierce, complicated woman who smelled like pine and smoke and survival, he felt something unexpected. Hope. Outside, the city slept. The guard continued their hunt. Victor and the council planned their genocide. The world kept turning toward catastrophe. But in this small, hidden room above an abandoned tannery, 2 unlikely allies rested, building strength for the battle ahead, learning to trust, learning to hope. And if Damien's last thought before sleep claimed him was how Maggie's presence made him feel less alone than he had in 17 years of service to the crown, well, that was a truth he could examine later. For now, there was only the darkness, the quiet, and the promise of dawn. Chapter 4. Into the Thornwood. Dawn came too quickly. Damien woke to find Maggie already up, checking weapons, repacking supplies with efficient, practiced movements. The room was still dim, but the quality of darkness had changed, no longer the deep black of night, but the soft gray that preceded sunrise. "How long was I asleep?" he asked, his voice rough. 4 hours. More than I planned to give you, but you needed it. She glanced at him. "How's the side?" He sat up carefully, testing the stitches. "Still painful, but manageable." "Better." "Good. We leave in 10 minutes. Eat something." She tossed him a piece of dried fruit. "It's a 3-hour hike to the Thornwood border. We need to move fast and quiet." Damien caught the fruit, chewing mechanically as he stood. His judge's clothing was ruined, torn, blood-stained, far too recognizable. Maggie seemed to read his mind, because she pulled out a bundle of rough-spun cloth. "Put these on, you'll blend in better." The clothes were simple dark trousers, a loose shirt, a weathered jacket, the kind of thing a laborer or tradesman might wear. Damien changed quickly, hyper-aware that Maggie was deliberately not watching, giving him privacy he hadn't asked for. When he was done, she turned back and nodded approvingly. "Better. You look almost human now." As opposed to? As opposed to a high court judge who's never done a day of real work in his life. But there was no malice in her voice, just statement of fact. They left the safe house as the city began to wake. Vendors setting up stalls, workers heading to their shifts. The ordinary rhythm of life continuing while Damien's world remained shattered. Maggie led them through the eastern districts, always moving, never stopping long enough to draw attention. They passed Royal Guard patrols twice, Damien's heart hammering in his chest, but Maggie's confident stride, her purposeful movement, made them invisible. Just 2 more citizens going about their business. The city walls appeared ahead, tall and imposing. But Maggie veered away from the main gate, following a smaller street that ran parallel to the wall. "There's a drainage tunnel," she explained quietly. "Runs under the wall, into the river on the other side. The grate is loose. Has been for years. The guard doesn't know about it? The guard knows about it. They just don't care. It's too small for an army, too inconvenient for merchants. Only useful for people who need to move without being seen." She gave him a significant look. "People like me." The tunnel was exactly as she'd described, narrow, dark, smelling of stagnant water and things Damien didn't want to identify. They had to crouch to move through it, Maggie leading with a small light crystal that cast just enough glow to see by. "This is where you tell me you're claustrophobic," Maggie said. "I'm not claustrophobic." "Good. Because it gets narrower." It did. For several terrifying minutes, Damien had to crawl, the walls pressing in on both sides, water soaking through his new clothes. His side screamed in protest, stitches pulling with every movement. But he bit down on the pain and kept moving. Then, finally, light, fresh air. The sound of running water. They emerged on the riverbank outside the city walls, hidden by overgrown brush and the curve of the land. Maggie immediately covered the tunnel entrance again, making it look untouched. "Welcome to the outside," she said. "From here, we head northeast. Stay close, stay quiet, and if I tell you to freeze, you don't move a muscle. Understand?" "What's out there? Besides the forest itself?" "Patrols. Not regular. Guard those stick to the roads. But scouts. Hunters. People who know these woods." She started walking. "And if we're unlucky, some of my people who don't take kindly to strangers." The terrain changed quickly. Cultivated land gave way to wild growth, and then the forest proper rose up around them, ancient trees with trunks wide as houses, their canopy so thick it blocked out most of the morning sun. The thornwood, named for the vicious brambles that grew in its depths, thorns as long as fingers that could tear through flesh and clothing alike. Maggie moved through it like she was born there, never hesitating, never lost, following paths that Damien couldn't see. He tried to match her silence, her fluid movement, but he was aware of every branch that cracked under his feet, every rustle of leaves that announced his passage. "You're not bad," Maggie said after an hour. "For someone who's only walked on marble floors. I told you. Military training. That was what, 15 years ago? 18. Impressive. Your body remembers. She paused, listening to something Damien couldn't hear. Then she relaxed fractionally. We're being watched. Damien's hand moved instinctively toward his belt, but he had no weapon. Maggie had offered him a knife back at the safe house, but he'd refused. He wasn't sure he could use it if needed. Don't react, Maggie said calmly. They're not hostile, just cautious. They're checking to see if you're a threat. They? Damien resisted the urge to look around. I don't see anyone. That's the point. Maggie raised her voice slightly. It's Maggie. I'm coming in. I have someone with me. A refugee from the city. He's under my protection. Silence. Then, from somewhere above and to the left, a voice called out, What kind of refugee needs the Thornwood, Maggie? We have enough mouths to feed. The kind who knows about the massacre the council is planning. Maggie's voice was steady, authoritative. The kind who can help us stop it. Let us through, Remy. I'll explain everything to the council. A longer pause. Then a figure dropped from a tree branch, 15 feet above them, a lean, scarred wolf in his 40s, with silver threading through his dark hair. He landed in a crouch, rose smoothly, and fixed Damien with a hard stare. This is your refugee? Remy's tone was skeptical. He has soft hands, city smell, and he moves like someone who's used to giving orders, not taking them. He was a judge, Maggie said simply, in the High Court. Until yesterday, when he discovered the council murdered the king and is planning to exterminate every rogue in the kingdom. Remy went very still. Say that again. The Alpha King is dead, assassinated by his own council. They're planning a full sweep of the Thornwood, 50,000 gold sovereigns allocated. Commander Gideon has the guard ready to move. They want every rogue dead by the new moon. That's, Remy looked between them. That's 17 days. 18, Damien corrected quietly. If we count today. Remy's eyes snapped to him. You're the source of this information? I witnessed the council meeting. Heard them discuss it openly. They've already killed the king. The massacre is next. And why should we trust anything a judge says? It was a fair question. Damien held the man's gaze. Because they tried to kill me when I objected. Because I lost everything, my position, my life, everything I believed in when I chose to run instead of joining their conspiracy. Because Maggie saved my life, and now I'm trying to save yours. Remy studied him for a long moment. Then he looked at Maggie. You trust him? I'm still deciding, Maggie said honestly. But his information is solid, and we need to warn the settlements. The council won't like this. The council doesn't have to like it, they have to hear it. Maggie's voice hardened. Are you going to let us through? Or do I need to go around you? Remy's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. You always were too stubborn for your own good. He stepped aside. Straight path to the main settlement. I'll send runners to the other communities, tell them to gather. But Maggie, if this is wrong, if you're bringing danger into our home, then I'll answer for it, same as always. Remy nodded, and melted back into the forest. One moment he was there, the next he was gone, as if he'd never existed. Friend of yours? Damien asked. Used to be. Maggie started walking again. His daughter was killed in a guard raid 3 years ago. 16 years old. Her crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. She glanced back at him. He doesn't trust easily anymore. Can't say I blame him. The forest opened up ahead, and suddenly they were in a clearing. But calling it a clearing didn't do it justice. It was a community, dozens of structures built into and around the massive trees, connected by rope bridges and wooden walkways. Homes, workshops, storage buildings, and everywhere, people, families, children playing, elders sitting in the sun. The normal, ordinary life of a community that just happened to exist outside the kingdom's law. Damien had expected squalor, chaos, the wild, dangerous existence that the High Court claimed rogues lived. Instead, he saw organization, purpose, people taking care of each other. This is the Thornwood? He asked. This is Haven, the largest of our settlements. Maggie led him down into the clearing. 300 people live here. Another 100 spread across the smaller communities. We have rules, structure, we look after our own. Heads turned as they entered. Conversations stopped. Children were quietly ushered toward their parents, and Damien realized with a sinking feeling that he was the source of the tension. Even in his common clothes, he stood out, moved differently, spoke differently. He was the enemy. Walking into their home, a woman approached, older, gray-haired, with the bearing of someone accustomed to authority. Behind her, 2 younger wolves flanked her protectively. "Maggie," the woman's voice was measured. "You bring an outsider to Haven. I bring a warning, Elder Maria." Maggie bowed her head slightly, a show of respect Damien hadn't seen from her before. "The kingdom plans to destroy us. All of us. This man has information we need to hear." Elder Maria's sharp eyes fixed on Damien. "A judge. I can smell the court on you, even through the forest dirt. Why would a judge warn rogues of anything except their own arrests? Because I'm not a judge anymore." Damien stepped forward, meeting her gaze. "Because the High Court has been corrupted beyond redemption. Because they murdered their own king to carry out genocide. And because if I don't help stop them, hundreds of innocent people will die." Innocent. The word held bitter irony. Strange term from someone who served the system that has hunted us for decades. "You're right. I served a system I thought was just. I was wrong. I can't change the past, but I can help change what happens next." Damien's voice was steady. "The council will move by the new moon. 18 days. They have the resources, the soldiers, the element of surprise. Unless we act now, the Thornwood falls." Murmurs rippled through the gathering crowd. Fear, anger, disbelief. Elder Maria raised her hand, and silence fell instantly. "If what you say is true, then we are already doomed. We cannot fight the royal guard. We have no army, no weapons to match theirs." "We don't need to fight them," Damien said. "We need to expose them. The outer provinces still have loyal commanders. Judges who serve the law rather than personal ambition. If we can prove the council's conspiracy, if we can show what they've done and what they plan to do, the kingdom will turn against them." "Prove it how?" Another voice from the crowd. "With what evidence?" "Lord Victor Castellan keeps detailed records in his private office. Documentation of every decision, every plan. It's how he operated, meticulous, organized, believing himself untouchable." Damien looked around at the assembled faces. "If Maggie and I can get into his office, if we can steal those documents and get them to the right people, we can stop this." That's suicide," someone called out. "Probably," Maggie agreed. "But it's also the only chance we have. The High Court is the most heavily guarded building in the kingdom, and by now they'll have Damien's description circulated everywhere. But I know those buildings, know how to move unseen, and Damien knows the layout, knows where to look. You ask us to stake our survival on a desperate infiltration by 2 people." Elder Maria's expression was grave. "And if you fail, the council moves forward, and we have lost our only warning, our only chance to prepare. If we do nothing, you die anyway," Damien said bluntly. "At least this way, you have a chance. Prepare defenses, plan evacuation routes, gather whatever resources you can. And if Maggie and I succeed, you won't need them. The council will fall before they can act. And if you fail, then you'll have 18 days warning instead of none. You can scatter, hide, survive. Some of you, anyway." Damien's voice softened. "I know I have no right to ask for your trust. I know what the court has done to you, what I've been complicit in. But I'm asking anyway. Let us try. Let us fight for you." Elder Maria was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Then she looked at Maggie. "You believe in this plan?" "I believe in the alternative being worse," Maggie said. "And I believe that sometimes you have to trust the person who has the most to lose." Damien lost everything when he chose to warn us instead of joining the conspiracy. That counts for something. It counts for very little if we're all dead. But Elder Maria nodded slowly. "Very well. You have the council's blessing to attempt this infiltration. But Maggie, you take full responsibility. If this man betrays us, if this is an elaborate trap, then I'll die alongside everyone else," Maggie said simply. "Same as always." The crowd dispersed slowly, people returning to their routines but with a new tension in the air. The news was spreading: massacre, conspiracy, 18 days. Elder Maria gestured for them to follow her to one of the larger structures. Inside was a meeting space, simple but functional. Maps on the walls. Documents. The administrative heart of Haven. "Tell me everything," she said once they were seated. "Every detail. Leave nothing out." Damien did. He described the council meeting, the casual way they'd discussed genocide, the revelation that the king was already dead. He explained Victor's likely record-keeping, the layout of the High Court, the security measures they'd face. When he finished, Elder Maria sat back, her face drawn. "This is worse than anything we feared. They've been planning it for months, maybe longer," Damien said. "The king was the only thing stopping them. Once he was gone, they could finally eliminate the alternative." Elder Maria looked at the maps on the wall, the Thornwood, with its dozen small settlements marked. "We've survived for 30 years by being small, scattered, not worth the effort of extermination." But something changed. "Power consolidation," Damien said. "The council wants absolute control. Can't have that while an alternative exists. While people can see that wolves can live outside pack law, and survive, even thrive." "We're not thriving," Maria said quietly. "We're surviving. There's a difference. But we're surviving on our own terms, and that's what terrifies them." Maggie leaned forward. "The settlements need to start preparing now. Evacuation plans, hidden supply caches, fallback positions. If we fail..." "When do you leave?" Maria interrupted. "Tomorrow morning. Damien needs another day to heal. The infiltration will be physically demanding, and he can't afford to tear those stitches again. Then you'll stay tonight. Rest, eat, prepare." Maria stood. "I'll call a full council meeting at sundown. Every settlement leader needs to hear this directly." She left, leaving Damien and Maggie alone in the meeting space. "They hate me," Damien said quietly. "They don't trust you. That's different." Maggie moved to the window, looking out over Haven. "You represent everything that's tried to destroy them. Every loss, every tragedy, every family member killed by the system you served. You can't expect them to welcome you with open arms." I just..." He trailed off, not sure how to finish. "You just what?" "I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Before so much damage was done." Maggie turned to face him. "We all wish that. But wishing doesn't change anything. Action does. You're here now. You're trying. That has to be enough." The door opened again, and a young girl entered, maybe 10 years old, with bright eyes and a cautious smile. She carried a tray of food. "Elder Maria said you'd be hungry," she said shyly. Maggie smiled, her expression transforming. "Thank you, Maya. How's your mother?" "Better. The medicine you brought last month helped." The girl set down the tray, then looked at Damien with unfiltered curiosity. "Are you really from the city? From the High Court?" "I was," Damien said carefully. "Mama says the court is full of bad people who hurt us." The words, so innocent, so matter-of-fact, hit like a physical blow. "Your mama is right. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was part of that for so long." Maya tilted her head, considering. "But you're not part of it now?" "No. Now, I'm trying to help stop them." "Then I guess you're not all bad." She smiled, and darted out of the room. Maggie laughed, quiet, genuine, out of the mouths of children. "She makes it sound so simple." "Maybe it is. Maybe we complicate things by overthinking them." Maggie moved to the tray, started eating. "You were bad. Now you're trying to be better. That's the story. That's an extremely simplified version of Damien." Maggie fixed him with a look. "Stop trying to carry the weight of every bad decision the High Court ever made. You can't change the past. You can only change what happens next. So, eat your food, rest, and tomorrow we'll go break into the most secure building in the kingdom and steal evidence from a man who wants you dead. Simple." "Despite everything," Damien laughed. It felt strange, wrong even, to laugh while planning something so dangerous. But somehow, in this moment, in this place, it was exactly what he needed. They ate together as the sun climbed higher, as Haven continued its life around them, as the clock ticked down toward either salvation or annihilation. And somewhere in the back of Damien's mind, a thought crystallized. This woman, this fierce, complicated, impossible woman, was becoming the most important person in his world. Not because she'd saved his life, not because they were allies in a desperate cause, but because she saw him, not the judge, not the symbol, just Damien. A man trying to do better. That thought should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like coming home. Hit that like button if you believe communities like Haven, people society threw away, deserve voices loud enough to defend them. Because when systems fail the vulnerable, the only thing that matters is whether we choose to stand with them or look away. Comment if you'd fight for people others have given up on, just like Damien and Maggie are doing. Chapter 5. The Weight of Tomorrow. The council meeting that evening was unlike anything Damien had experienced in the High Court. No marble halls, no formal robes, no rigid hierarchy, just people, settlement leaders from across the Thornwood, gathered around a fire in the center of Haven, sharing information, debating strategy, making decisions collectively, rather than by decree. Damien sat at the edge of the circle, aware that he was being watched, evaluated. Every word he spoke, every gesture, was scrutinized by people who had every reason to distrust him. He told them everything again, answered their questions, provided every detail he could remember about guard deployments, council procedures, the timeline for the massacre, and through it all, he felt the weight of their judgment. These weren't criminals, weren't the lawless chaos that the High Court portrayed. They were families, communities, people who had built something real out of necessity and survival, and he'd spent 17 years helping to create the system that wanted them dead. The evacuation plans need to be finalized by week's end, said Rowan, leader of one of the smaller settlements. He was young, maybe 30, with burn scars covering half his face. If the infiltration fails, we'll need time to scatter. Scatter where? Another leader, Lena, an older woman with iron-gray hair. Every neighboring territory has treaties with the Crown. They'll just send us back, or kill us themselves to curry favor. Then we go further, beyond the treaties, past the borderlands. That's weeks of travel, through hostile territory, with children, elderly, sick. Lena shook her head. Half of us won't make it. Half is better than none, Rowan countered. The debate continued. Damien listened, making mental notes. These people were strategic, practical. They'd survived this long by being smart, adaptable, but there was fear beneath the pragmatism, the knowledge that no matter what they decided, people would die. Maggie sat beside Elder Maria, contributing occasionally but mostly listening. She caught Damien's eye once, a brief connection across the firelight. He couldn't read her expression, too many shadows, too much distance. Finally, as the moon rose high above the canopy, Elder Maria raised her hand. We've talked enough for tonight. The infiltration attempt will proceed as planned. Maggie and the judge leave at dawn. The rest of us prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. She looked around the circle. Go home, be with your families, and pray to whatever gods you still believe in that we survive the next 18 days. The gathering dispersed slowly, leaders returning to their settlements, Haven residents heading to their homes. Damien stood, unsure where he was supposed to go. He had no place here. No. Come on, Maggie said, appearing at his elbow. You're staying with me tonight. Elder Maria's orders. I can find somewhere else. I don't want to impose. It's not about what you want. It's about keeping you alive. She started walking, and Damien followed. Haven doesn't have guest quarters, and if I leave you unsupervised, someone might decide you're a threat and handle it permanently. So you stay where I can see you. Her home was small, a single-room structure built into the base of a massive oak tree, with walls of woven branches and a roof of layered bark. Inside was sparse but functional. A bed, a small table, shelves with supplies. Personal items scattered around a worn book, a carved wooden figure, clothes hanging from pegs. It's not much, Maggie said, suddenly self-conscious. It's honest, Damien replied. More honest than anything in the High Court. Maggie busied herself lighting candles, pulling out supplies. There's a wash basin in the corner if you want to clean up. And I need to check those stitches again before we sleep. Damien moved to the basin, splashing water on his face. It was cold, shocking, grounding. He looked at his reflection in the small mirror above the basin. A stranger looked back. 2 days ago, he'd been Judge Ashford, respected, powerful, certain of his place in the world. Now he was just Damien, a fugitive with no home, no identity, no certainty except the woman standing behind him. "Shirt," Maggie said. He removed it, and she examined the wound with clinical efficiency. Her fingers were gentle, careful not to cause unnecessary pain. "It's healing well," she said. "No infection. You might actually survive this." Might being the operative word. Always is. She moved away, started preparing bedding on the floor. "You take the bed. I'll sleep here." "Maggie, no. This is your home. I'll take the floor. You have a half-healed wound, and we're about to attempt something that will require peak physical condition. You need actual rest." She didn't look at him. "Besides, I've slept in worse places. The floor is luxury compared to some." Damien wanted to argue, but she was right, and he was exhausted, bone-deep tired in a way that went beyond physical fatigue, the kind of tired that came from watching your entire world collapse. He lay down on the bed, simple but comfortable. Maggie settled onto her makeshift bedding, blowing out most of the candles. One remained lit, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken thoughts. "Maggie? Why do you live alone? I saw other homes, families, couples, groups, sharing space. But you're by yourself." She was quiet for a long moment. "It's easier that way." "Easier how?" "Easier not to get attached. Easier to leave if I need to. Easier to take risks without worrying about who I'm leaving behind." Her voice was matter-of-fact. "I'm a runner, Damien. That's what I do. I move between settlements, carry messages, find supplies in the city, help people who need to disappear. It's dangerous work. Having people depend on me, having people I care about. It makes it harder." "Makes what harder?" "Making the choices that need to be made." She shifted, and in the candlelight, he could see her profile. 3 years ago, I had a partner. Not romantic, just someone I ran with. His name was Joel. We'd been working together for 5 years. He was good, fast, smart. My best friend, if I'm honest. Damien waited, sensing she needed to tell this at her own pace. "We were extracting a family from the city. Mother, father, 2 kids. The guard had marked them for arrest. The father had witnessed a guard captain taking bribes, was stupid enough to report it. They were going to make an example of the whole family." Maggie's voice was steady, but there was pain beneath it. "We got them out, but the guard caught our trail. They cornered us at the Western Bridge." "What happened?" "Joel told me to run with the family. Said he'd hold them off." "Buy us time," I argued. "Said we'd find another way." But he was right, it was the only way to save them. She paused. "So I ran. Took that family to safety. And Joel died on that bridge, alone, buying us those extra minutes. I'm sorry." He made his choice. I made mine. The family survived. They're living in one of the eastern settlements now, safe. But Joel. She trailed off. After that, I decided I was done with partners. Done with attachments. It's easier to do this work when you're not worried about someone else's life. "But you saved me," Damien pointed out. "You're risking your life for me right now. That's different." "How?" "Because I'm choosing to. Because you're a mission, not something more." But there was uncertainty in her voice now. "Besides, once this is over, once we stop the council or die trying, you'll go back to whatever life you rebuild. And I'll go back to running. That's how it works." Damien sat up, looking at her across the small room. "What if I don't want to go back? What if I want something different?" "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that 2 days ago, I lost everything I thought defined me. My position, my authority, my understanding of the world. And you know what I discovered?" He met her eyes. "None of it mattered. Not really. The things that matter are truth, justice, real justice. Not the corrupted version I served and people who stand up when everything tells them to sit down. People like you. Maggie stared at him. Damien, I'm not saying this well. I'm trying to say thank you. For saving me. For showing me what I was blind to. For giving me a chance to do something that actually matters. He lay back down. You're not just a mission to me, Maggie. You're the reason I'm still alive. And more than that, you're the reason I want to stay alive. The silence that followed was different. Charged. Heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to name. Get some sleep, Maggie finally said, her voice rough. We have a long day tomorrow. You too? I will. But neither of them slept. Not right away. They lay in the darkness, aware of each other's presence, the small space between them feeling simultaneously too large and too small. Damien's mind drifted. Tomorrow they would leave Haven, travel back through the Thornwood, break into the High Court. It was suicidal. Victor would have increased security. The entire guard would be looking for Damien. They'd be walking into the most dangerous building in the kingdom, with no backup, no escape plan, nothing but desperation and hope. And yet, lying here in this small room with Maggie's steady breathing in the darkness, he felt something he hadn't expected to feel again. Peace. Not because the danger was gone, not because the mission was easy, but because for the first time in his life, he was doing something that mattered, fighting for something real. And he wasn't alone. Damien? Maggie's voice was barely a whisper. Yeah? If we don't make it back, if tomorrow goes wrong. She paused. I want you to know that I don't regret saving you. I don't regret any of this. His throat tightened. Neither do I. Even though I pulled you into this insane plan, even though you could have run, hidden, saved yourself, especially because of that. He turned his head toward her, though he couldn't see her clearly in the darkness. You gave me a chance to be better than what I was. That's not something I can regret. Another silence. Then, you're nothing like I expected a judge to be. You're nothing like I expected a rogue to be. Maggie laughed soft, genuine. I guess we both had a lot to learn. Still learning. Yeah. A pause. Yeah, we are. Sleep came eventually, creeping up on them in the quiet darkness. Damien's last conscious thought was of Maggie's voice, steady and strong, a lifeline in the chaos. And miles away, in the High Court, Lord Victor Castellan stood in his office, studying a map of the Thornwood. Red marks indicated the planned attack points, numbers calculating casualties, resources, timeline. Any word on Judge Ashford? He asked the captain standing at attention behind him. No, my lord. He's vanished. We've searched every building, every safe house. It's like he disappeared. Victor smiled cold, calculating. He always was clever. But clever only gets you so far. Double the patrols around the court, triple security on my office. If Damien is going to do something desperate, it will be soon. You think he'll come back here? I know he will. Because despite everything, despite his idealism and his naivety, he's still a strategist. And a strategist knows that the only way to stop us is to expose us, which means he needs evidence. Victor turned from the map. And the evidence is here. In this building, in this very room. Should we move it? No. Let it stay. It's the perfect bait. Victor's smile widened. When Damien comes for it, and he will, we'll be waiting. No mercy. Just the end of a problem that should have been eliminated 2 days ago. The captain saluted and left. Victor returned to his map, to his plans, to his vision of a kingdom purged of imperfection. He didn't know that in the Thornwood, in a small room built into an oak tree, the very problem he was plotting to eliminate was sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. Didn't know that the weapon he'd tried to silence had found a voice. Didn't know that tomorrow, everything would change. Morning came too quickly. Again, Damien woke to find Maggie already moving, packing supplies, checking weapons. The routine was familiar now, the efficient preparation, the focused silence. How's the side? She asked without looking at him. He tested it. Still sore, but manageable. Good enough. It'll have to be. She handed him a pack. Water, food, medical supplies, rope, standard infiltration kit. There's also this. She held out a knife. Simple, practical, deadly. Maggie, I told you. And I told you we're breaking into the most dangerous building in the kingdom. You don't have to use it, but you need to have it. Just in case. Damien took the knife, feeling the weight of it in his hand. He'd carried weapons during his military service, but that was years ago. Before he'd believed that law and reason could solve everything. How naive that seemed now. There's one more thing, Maggie said. She pulled out a small vial, dark liquid inside. Nightshade extract. 3 drops, and you're unconscious in seconds. 6 drops, and your heart stops. Why are you giving me poison? Ooh. Because if we're captured, if Victor has you, and is using you to get information about Haven, about the settlements. She pressed the vial into his hand. You need an option. I have my own. This is yours. The reality of what she was saying hit him. You'd rather I die than risk the Thornwood. I'd rather you have a choice. Maggie's eyes were fierce. No one should be forced to betray their people through torture. No one should have to live with that. So I'm giving you an alternative. I hope you never need it. But if you do. Damien pocketed the vial, his hand shaking slightly. Thank you, I think. Don't thank me. Just don't use it unless there's no other option. She shouldered her pack. Ready? No. But I don't think I ever will be. Then we're as ready as we're going to get. She opened the door. Let's go rob the High Court. Outside, Haven was awake. People going about their morning routines, but with an undercurrent of tension. They knew what today meant, knew that Maggie and Damien might not return. Elder Maria waited at the edge of the settlement. The other leaders have returned to their communities. They're beginning evacuation preparations. If you succeed, send word immediately. We'll need time to call everyone back, to stand down the preparations. And if we fail? Maggie asked. Then we scatter. Hide. Survive. Maria looked at them both. You're taking a tremendous risk. For people who have no claim on you. That's not nothing. It's everything, Damien said quietly. It's the only thing that matters. Maria nodded slowly. Then go. And may whatever gods still listen protect you both. They left Haven behind, moving into the forest's embrace. The journey back toward Valdris was quicker than the journey out. Maggie knew shortcuts, hidden paths that saved hours. They didn't talk much. Both were conserving energy, focusing on the mission ahead, but occasionally, their eyes would meet. Brief moments of connection that said more than words could. We're in this together. Whatever happens, we face it as a team. I trust you. That last one was the most surprising. Damien realized, somewhere between Haven and the city, that he trusted Maggie completely. Trusted her judgment, her skill, her integrity. In 3 days, she'd become the person he relied on most in the world. When had that happened? When had this fierce, complicated woman gone from stranger to savior to… what? Partner? Friend? Something more? He pushed the thought away. Later. If there was a later. By midday, they reached the city's outskirts. They could see the walls, the gates, the guard patrols moving in their systematic patterns. We'll wait until nightfall, Maggie said. Go in through the same drainage tunnel. Then we need to reach the High Court without being seen. That's the easy part, Damien said. What's the hard part? Getting into Victor's office. It's on the 4th floor, central tower. There are guards at every stairwell, every corridor. Security has probably tripled since my escape, but you know the layout. I know the official layout. The stairs, the corridors, the public spaces. Maggie smiled. And I know the unofficial layout. The service passages. The maintenance tunnels. The spaces that people like you never see because people like me use them. You've been inside the High Court? Multiple times. How do you think I've been running refugees out of the city for years? She studied the building in the distance. Every building has a skeleton beneath its skin. Passages for servants, for maintenance workers, for the people who keep the place running but are never meant to be seen. That's our way in. Victor's office connects to the service areas. Every office does. How else would servants deliver meals, clean, maintain the fires? Maggie pulled out a rough sketch. This is from memory, so it might not be perfect, but here's the general layout. They spent the afternoon planning, memorizing routes, discussing contingencies. As the sun set, they moved closer to the city, staying hidden in the brush and shadows. Once we're inside, Maggie said, we move fast. Get to Victor's office, grab whatever documents we can carry, get out. No unnecessary risks, no heroics. Agreed. And Damien? She looked at him seriously. If something goes wrong, if one of us gets caught, the other keeps going. Gets the evidence out. Completes the mission. No rescue attempts, no sacrifices. Understood? Maggie, promise me. He wanted to refuse, wanted to say that he wouldn't leave her behind, wouldn't abandon her no matter what. But he saw the steel in her eyes, the absolute conviction. I promise, he lied. She knew it was a lie. He could see that in her expression. But she nodded anyway. Good. Then let's go change the world. They moved toward the drainage tunnel as darkness fell over Valdres. The city lights twinkled in the distance, beautiful, peaceful, completely unaware that two people were about to shake its foundations. Behind them, the Thornwood waited, hundreds of people depending on their success. 17 days until the massacre, everything riding on this one desperate gambit. No pressure. Damien took a deep breath, felt the weight of the knife at his belt, the vial of poison in his pocket, the ache of healing stitches in his side. And beside him, Maggie moved like a shadow given form, confident and deadly, and impossibly brave. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The hunt was about to become the counterattack. Chapter 6. Shadows in the Court. The drainage tunnel was exactly as Damien remembered, narrow, dark, smelling of decay and standing water. But this time, he moved through it with more confidence. His body was learning, adapting, becoming something other than what it had been. They emerged on the riverbank as the moon rose, casting silver light across the water. Maggie covered the tunnel entrance again, her movements automatic, practiced. From here, we follow the river wall north, she whispered. There's a service entrance near the old aqueduct. It's used for coal deliveries locked, but I can deal with that. They moved through the darkness like ghosts. Damien found himself matching Maggie's rhythm, her silence, her fluid grace. His military training was returning, muscle memory overriding years of sedentary court life. The service entrance appeared ahead, a heavy wooden door set into the stone wall, barely visible in the shadows. Maggie produced a set of lockpicks, working the mechanism with practiced ease. Where did you learn that? Damien whispered. You don't survive in the margins without skills. The lock clicked open. Inside. Quickly, the passage beyond was dark, narrow, smelling of coal and dust. Service corridors, the veins and arteries of the High Court that Damien had never seen, never thought about. The invisible infrastructure that kept the building functioning. Maggie moved forward confidently, and Damien realized she'd memorized this route. How many times had she been here? How many refugees had she smuggled through these very passages? Guard changes at midnight, Damien whispered. That's our best window. They'll be distracted, less attentive. How long until midnight? 20 minutes. Then we wait here. Maggie pulled him into a small alcove, barely large enough for both of them. The space was cramped, forcing them close together. Stay quiet. Stay still. They pressed against the wall, bodies close, breathing synchronized. Damien could feel Maggie's heart beating steady, controlled, while his own hammered against his ribs. Footsteps echoed above them. Voices. The regular patrol passing through the main corridors. Maggie's hand found his, squeezed once. Stay calm. We're safe here. The footsteps faded. The voices grew distant. But they remained frozen, waiting, every sense heightened. You're good at this, Damien whispered, barely audible. Practice. Her breath was warm against his ear. You're not bad yourself. For a judge. Former judge. Right. Former. There was something in her voice, amusement, maybe, or something deeper. What will you be after this, when we've stopped the council, when this is over? I don't know, I haven't thought that far ahead. Liar. She shifted slightly, and he felt rather than saw her smile in the darkness. "You're a strategist. You always think ahead." She was right. He had thought about it. About what came after. About whether there was a place for him in whatever world emerged from this chaos. "I thought maybe I could help," he said quietly. "Not as a judge. Not with authority or power. Just help. The way you do. Moving between places. Protecting people who need protection. Making sure the system, whatever system we build, actually serves justice instead of just power. That's a good dream. It's naive, isn't it? Maybe. But naive dreams are better than cynical nightmares." Maggie's hand was still in his, her fingers intertwined with his own. "The world needs people who still believe things can be better." "Do you believe that?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I believe that people like you, people who had everything and gave it up for what's right, give me hope. And I haven't had much of that in a long time." The footsteps returned, closer this time. They pressed deeper into the alcove, holding their breath. A guard passed within feet of their hiding spot, his torch casting dancing shadows on the walls. Then he was gone. Maggie checked the small timepiece she carried. "Midnight. Let's move." They emerged from the alcove, moving deeper into the service corridors. The passages twisted and turned, occasionally opening into larger spaces, storage rooms, coal cellars, maintenance areas. Maggie navigated them all with certainty. "Here." She stopped at a narrow stairwell. "This leads up to the 3rd floor. From there, we use the servants' passage to reach the 4th floor central tower." The stairs were steep, dark, clearly not meant for regular use. They climbed in silence, every creak of wood, making Damien's heart race. 3rd floor. The corridor beyond was better lit candles and sconces, carpeted floors. This was closer to the public areas, more dangerous. "Stay behind me," Maggie whispered. "And if we encounter anyone, let me handle it." "Maggie, you're recognizable. I'm not. If someone sees us, I'm just a servant moving through the halls. But if they see you..." She didn't need to finish. They moved along the corridor, past closed doors, past tapestries, and artwork Damien recognized from his years in this building. It felt surreal, being here as an intruder in a place he'd once called home. Voices ahead. Maggie pulled him into a doorway, a linen closet, barely large enough for one person, let alone two. They squeezed inside, the door cracked just enough to see through. 2 guards passed, discussing the search for the traitor judge. Damien heard his own name, heard the speculation about where he might have gone. One guard thought he'd fled to the southern territories. The other insisted he was still in the city, hiding. Neither considered that he might be inside the high court itself. The guards moved past. Maggie waited a beat, then 2, then eased the door open. 4th floor, she breathed. "Come on." The servants' passage to the 4th floor was even narrower than the previous stairs, more ladder than staircase, with handholds carved into the stone. Damien's side protested as he climbed, stitches pulling, but he gritted his teeth and kept moving. 4th floor. The central tower. Victor's domain. The passage opened into a small antechamber, a space where servants would wait before entering the formal offices. Maggie peered through the peephole in the door leading to the main corridor. 2 guards, she whispered, stationed outside Victor's office. They're alert, armed, and positioned perfectly to see anyone approaching. "Is there another way in?" "Not that I know of." Maggie turned to him. "You know this area better than I do. Is there any other entrance to Victor's office? Windows? Connecting rooms?" Damien closed his eyes, visualizing the layout. Victor's office occupied the corner of the tower, with windows facing both east and south. The walls were solid stone, no connecting passages. The only entrance was the main door, which meant going past those guards. Unless... "The windows," he said. "Victor's office has windows, large ones, for light. We're 4 stories up, I know. But the tower exterior has decorative stonework. Ledges, carved columns. It might be possible to climb from one window to another." Maggie stared at him. "You want to climb the outside of the high court. 4 stories up. At night, with a half-healed wound in your side. Do you have a better idea?" She didn't. That was answer enough. They backtracked to a window in the servants' corridor, a narrow opening that overlooked the courtyard below. Maggie tested the stonework, finding handholds, evaluating the route. "It's possible," she said finally. "Barely. But Damien, if you fall—" "I won't fall. If you fall," she continued, "you die. And I complete the mission alone. Agreed?" "Agreed." She looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she pulled off her pack, removing a length of rope. "I'll go first, establish the route. You follow exactly where I place my hands and feet, understand? Maggie, I should go first. I know which window. You go first with that wound, and you'll slip, fall, die. Then I'll have to complete this mission while dealing with the guilt of letting you kill yourself." She tied the rope around her waist. "I go first. You follow. That's the plan." Damien wanted to argue, but she was already moving out the window, finding the first handhold, pulling herself onto the exterior wall with fluid grace. He watched her climb, her movements precise and controlled. She made it look easy, but he could see the difficulty, the narrow ledges, the gaps between handholds, the sheer drop to the courtyard below. She reached the first window, someone's office, dark and empty, gestured for him to follow. Damien climbed out the window, and immediately understood why Maggie had been concerned. The handholds were smaller than they'd looked from inside. The stone was slick with evening dew, and his side screamed in protest with every movement. But he climbed, hand over hand, foot by foot, not looking down, focusing only on the next hold, the next movement. He reached Maggie, and she was already moving toward the next window. Victor's window. The ornate carved frame was visible ahead, light showing behind the curtains. Victor was in his office. Working late. Of course he was. Maggie reached the window, peering carefully through a gap in the curtains. She signaled back to Damien. One person. Alone. Distracted. This was their chance. She produced a small glass cutter from her pack, another tool Damien hadn't known she carried. Working carefully, she cut a small opening in the window pane, just large enough to reach through and unlatch the lock. The window swung open silently. Maggie slipped inside like smoke. Damien followed, less graceful, his boots making a soft sound on the wooden floor. Victor looked up from his desk. For a moment, time froze. Mentor and student, betrayer and betrayed, staring at each other across the space of Victor's office, the office where Damien had spent countless hours discussing law, justice, the proper way to serve the kingdom. "Hello, Damien," Victor said calmly. "I've been expecting you." Maggie moved, her knife appearing in her hand, but Victor was faster. He pressed something beneath his desk, an alarm, Damien realized with sinking dread. "The guards will be here in 30 seconds, Victor said, standing. "You could run, probably make it to the window before they arrive, but then you'd leave empty-handed. Or—" he gestured to the locked cabinet behind his desk. "You could take what you came for. The evidence. All of it. Every plan, every document, every piece of proof you need to expose the council." "Why would you tell us that?" Maggie demanded. "Because I want Damien to make a choice." Victor's eyes never left Damien's face. "Run now, save yourself, or stay, get the evidence, and face capture. What will it be, my former student? Survival, or principle?" Footsteps in the corridor, getting closer. "Damien, we have to go," Maggie said urgently. "Now." But Damien was staring at the cabinet, at everything they'd come for, the proof that could save hundreds of lives, the evidence that could stop the massacre. 20 seconds. "The combination," Damien said. "What's the combination to the cabinet?" Victor smiled sad, almost fond. "You really haven't changed. Still choosing justice over survival." He recited a series of numbers. "I taught you well, Damien, even if you're using those lessons against me." 15 seconds. Damien moved to the cabinet, his fingers flying over the lock mechanism. The numbers Victor had given him. Click. 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 The cabinet opened. Inside were files, documents, maps, everything. Victor really had documented everything. 10 seconds. "Damien." Maggie was at the window. We can't carry all of that. She was right. There were dozens of files. They could take maybe 3, 4 at most. 5 seconds. Damien's hands moved on instinct, grabbing the most important-looking documents, the massacre plans, the assassination confession. The door burst open. Guards poured in, weapons drawn. 6 of them, maybe more, shouting, chaos. Maggie grabbed Damien's arm, pulling him toward the window. But there were guards in the courtyard now too, looking up, pointing. They were trapped. Victor stood calmly behind his desk, watching. It's over, Damien. Put down the documents. Surrender. I'll make it quick. Damien looked at the files in his hands, at Maggie beside him, knife ready, prepared to fight impossible odds. At the window behind them, 4 stories above stone courtyard. At the guards blocking the door. No escape. No way out. Unless… Maggie, he said quietly. Do you trust me? What? Damien, now is not the time for… Do you trust me? She looked at him, and something passed between them. Understanding. Connection. Yes, I trust you. Then hold on to those documents. Don't let go no matter what. He handed her the files, then turned to Victor. You want me? You can have me. But she goes free. With the evidence. That's the deal. Damien, no. Maggie started. That's the deal, Damien repeated, louder. Me for her. Me for the evidence reaching the people who need to see it. Victor studied him. You'd sacrifice yourself? For a rogue? For people you don't even know? For what's right, which is something you stopped believing in a long time ago. The guards were surrounding them now. 6 sets of weapons pointed at Damien's chest. But Victor held up his hand, stopping them. Very well, Victor said. The rogue goes free. With the documents, you stay. And Damien? This time, there will be no escape. No clever tricks. You'll die in this building. Today. That's your choice? That's my choice. No. Maggie grabbed his arm. We made a promise. We said no sacrifices. We said, I lied. Damien looked at her, really looked at her, memorizing her face. Get those documents out. Warn the provinces. Stop the massacre. That's all that matters. You matter. Her voice broke. Damn it, Damien, you matter. Then make sure this means something. He pulled away from her grip, stepping toward the guards. Go. Now. Before they change their minds. Maggie stood frozen. The documents clutched to her chest, her expression devastated. Then, slowly, she moved toward the window. I'll come back for you, she said. No, you won't. You'll complete the mission, like we agreed. I agreed to no such thing. She was at the window now, one leg over the sill. This isn't over, Damien. I don't leave people behind. I don't. Lord Castellan. A guard lieutenant burst into the room. The Thornwood settlements are mobilizing. Our scouts report they're preparing defenses, evacuating civilians. They know about the operation. Victor's head snapped toward Maggie. You told them. You warned them already. Maggie smiled, fierce, triumphant. Did you really think we'd come here without a contingency plan? The moment we entered the city, runners went out. The Thornwood knows everything. And by now, so do the outer provinces. You're done, Victor. You're just too arrogant to realize it. Then we moved the timeline up. Victor's voice was ice. Lieutenant, send word to Commander Gideon. The Thornwood operation begins immediately. Tonight, we hit them before they can fully prepare. No! Damien lunged forward, but the guards caught him, slamming him against the wall. Pain exploded through his side. Fresh blood soaked through his shirt. Tonight, Victor repeated. Every settlement, every rogue. We end this problem once and for all. He looked at Maggie. Your warning bought them hours, not days. They'll still die. All of them. Maggie's expression went cold. Deadly. Then I'll die with them. Fighting you. Stopping you. She dropped out the window. Damien heard her hit the courtyard, a controlled roll, the kind he'd seen her do a dozen times. Then footsteps, running, shouts from the guards below, but she was fast. Faster than them. Within seconds, the sounds of pursuit faded. She was gone. With the evidence. With hope. And Damien was here. Captured. Bleeding. But somehow, impossibly, he smiled. You think this is funny? Victor demanded. I think you just lost. Damien's vision was starting to blur. Blood loss. Adrenaline crash. Shock. You moved up the timeline. That means you're panicking. That means you're afraid. And fear makes people sloppy. The only one who should be afraid is you. Victor nodded to the guards. Take him to the holding cells. And make sure he doesn't die before I have time to properly question him. I want to know every settlement location, every contact, every detail of their pathetic resistance. The guards dragged Damien from the office. As they moved through the corridor, his mind raced through calculations. Maggie would reach the Thornwood in 3 hours. The guard couldn't mobilize in less than 4, even on an accelerated timeline. That gave Haven and the other settlements maybe 5 hours to prepare. 5 hours to evacuate 400 people, to gather weapons, to organize defenses. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. It was better than nothing. And Maggie was out there. Fierce, capable Maggie. She'd warned them. She'd get the evidence to the right people. Pain exploded across the back of his head. Darkness rushed in. His last thought before unconsciousness claimed him was of Maggie's face, her voice breaking as she'd said, "You matter." Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. But he'd made his choice. And he'd make it again. Every single time. Chapter 7. The Race Against Dawn. Maggie ran. She ran through the courtyard, past shouting guards, over the wall using handholds she'd memorized years ago. She ran through the city streets, documents pressed against her chest, her heart hammering not from exertion but from rage and grief and desperate determination. "You matter," the words echoed in her mind, her own voice breaking as she'd said them. And Damien's response, that infuriating, noble, self-sacrificing response. "Then make sure this means something. Damn you," she whispered as she ran. "Damn you for making me care." Because she did care, more than she'd wanted to, more than she'd planned. Somewhere between saving his life and watching him choose principle over survival, Franklin Gray had become more than a mission, more than an alliance. He'd become someone she couldn't afford to lose. But she'd left him anyway. Because he was right. The mission mattered more than any one person. More than both of them, even if it felt like leaving a piece of herself behind. She reached the drainage tunnel, slipped through without slowing. The Thornwood was 3 hours away at a normal pace. She'd make it in 2. She had to. Behind her, the city erupted into organized chaos. She heard the bells, the alarm bells that meant full guard mobilization, heard the shouting, the march of boots, the clatter of weapons being distributed. Victor was moving the entire operation forward, tonight, now, which meant the Thornwood had maybe 4 hours before the attack began. Maggie pushed harder, her legs burning, her lungs screaming. She'd run impossible distances before, had pushed her body beyond reasonable limits more times than she could count. But this felt different. This felt like running toward the end of everything. The forest rose up ahead. She hit the tree line without slowing, her path automatic, memorized from years of running these trails. 1 hour passed, then 90 minutes. Her side cramped, her vision blurred. But she kept moving, because stopping meant death. Not just hers, hundreds of deaths. 2 hours. She was close now. Could smell the smoke from Haven's fires, hear the distant sounds of the settlement. She burst into the clearing, and chaos greeted her. People were everywhere packing supplies, organizing evacuation groups, small children crying as parents rushed to prepare. Elder Maria stood at the center, directing the chaos with practiced authority. "Maggie!" Maria's expression shifted from relief to alarm. "Where's the judge? Where's Damien?" "Captured." The word tasted like ash. "Victor caught us. Damien surrendered himself so I could escape with these." She thrust the documents at Maria. Everything. The assassination plans, the massacre orders, all of it. Maria took the documents, her hands shaking slightly. "And the guards?" "Coming tonight." Victor moved up the timeline. "You have 4 hours. Maybe less." The clearing went silent. 400 people processing the reality that they had hours, not days, before the Royal Guard descended on them with orders to kill everyone. We can't evacuate everyone in 4 hours, Lena said, appearing from one of the meeting halls. Not the elderly, not the children, not with any semblance of order. Then, we don't evacuate. Remy stepped forward, weapons already strapped to his back. We fight. Against the entire royal guard? Rowan shook his head. We'd be slaughtered. We'll be slaughtered either way. Remy's voice rose. At least if we fight, we die on our feet, protecting our families. Not running like animals. There's another option. Maggie's voice cut through the argument. She looked at Elder Maria. The documents. We can get them to the outer provinces, to lords who still serve actual law. If they see proof of the king's assassination, proof of the planned genocide, that takes days, Maria interrupted. We need help now, tonight. Then we create time. Maggie's mind was racing, strategy forming even as she spoke. We don't evacuate, we don't make a stand, we disappear. Explain, Maria commanded. The guard is expecting a fight or a panicked evacuation. They're expecting us to be here, in the settlements, easy targets. Maggie moved to the map hanging in the meeting hall. But what if we're not here? What if we scatter into the deep thornwood small groups, moving separately, leaving no trail? The forest is massive. The guard could search for months and never find everyone. We'd be abandoning our homes, Lena said quietly. Homes can be rebuilt. People can't. Maggie looked around at the assembled faces. We scatter tonight. Take only essential supplies. Move in groups of 10, no more. Each group takes a different direction, different depth into the forest. We have hidden caches, supply points. We use those, and we survive long enough for the documents to reach people who can actually stop this. And what about the guards when they arrive and find empty settlements? Remy asked. You think they'll just leave? No, they'll search. But searching a forest this size? At night? With no trails to follow? Maggie shook her head. It'll take them days, maybe weeks. And every day they waste searching is another day for the evidence to reach the provinces. Another day for the truth to spread. Maria was studying the map, her expression calculating. It could work. If we move immediately. If we're smart about it. It's the only thing that could work, Maggie said. A stand-up fight kills everyone. A panicked evacuation leaves trails they can follow. But a planned dispersal? Groups moving in different directions, covering tracks, using the forest itself as protection? She met Maria's eyes. It gives us a chance. Then we start now. Maria raised her voice. Everyone, listen. We're implementing protocol scatter. Groups of 10, assigned by family units. You have 30 minutes to gather essential supplies only. Food, water, medical supplies, weapons if you have them. Everything else stays. We move into the deep forest, and we don't stop until dawn. The clearing exploded into motion, organized chaos as families gathered. Supplies were distributed. Groups formed under the direction of settlement leaders. Maggie found herself surrounded by children, Maya and her siblings, along with half a dozen others who'd been playing near the meeting hall. Are the bad people coming? Maya asked, her voice small. Yes. Maggie knelt down, meeting the girl at eye level. No point in lying. But we're going to keep you safe. You're going to go on an adventure into the forest with your mama and some other families. And I promise that you'll be okay. What about you? Maya's eyes were too knowing for a 10-year-old. Will you be okay? Maggie forced a smile. I'm always okay. That's a lie. Maya hugged her suddenly, fierce and tight. But it's a nice lie. So thank you. The girl ran off to find her mother, leaving Maggie kneeling in the dirt, her throat tight with emotions she couldn't name. She's right, you know. Elder Maria appeared beside her. It is a lie. You're planning something that doesn't involve scattering into the forest with the rest of us. I'm going back, Maggie said simply, to Valdris, to the High Court. For the judge. For Damien. Yes, that's suicide. Victor has him. The entire guard is mobilized. You'll never reach him, let alone free him. Maybe not. Maggie stood, checking her weapons. But I have to try. Why? Maria's voice was genuinely curious. Why risk everything, risk yourself for one man? The mission is complete. The evidence is secure. The settlements are scattering. Your part is done. Because he didn't leave me. Maggie's voice was rough. When we were in that office, when we were surrounded, he could have run. Could have saved himself. But he chose to stay. To let himself be captured so I could escape. So the mission could succeed. And now you're going to throw away his sacrifice by getting yourself killed trying to rescue him. I'm going to honor his sacrifice by making sure it wasn't permanent. Maggie turned to face Maria fully. He matters. Not just to the mission. Not just as a symbol or a useful ally. He matters. As a person. As someone who chose justice over survival. Who gave up everything for people he'd never met. I can't just leave him to die. Maria was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her robe, pulling out a small leather pouch. Thorn root powder causes temporary paralysis. One pinch in someone's drink, and they're unconscious in minutes but appear dead to casual observation. Pulse slows to almost nothing. Breathing becomes imperceptible. Lasts about 4 hours. Maggie took the pouch, confused. Why are you giving me this? Because if you're going to do something incredibly stupid, you might as well have the tools to do it successfully. Maria's expression softened. And because I've seen the way you look at him. The way he looks at you. Whatever this is between you two, it's not just alliance. It's not just strategy. And love, even inconvenient, impossible love, is worth fighting for. I don't, Maggie started. Yes, you do. You just haven't admitted it yet. Maria squeezed her shoulder. Go. Save your judge. But Maggie, come back alive. That's an order. Yes, Elder. Maggie gathered supplies quickly, weapons, rope, the thornroot powder, what little remained of her energy reserves. She was exhausted, running on fumes and determination. But she'd been exhausted before, had pushed through worse. Remy found her as she was preparing to leave. You're going after him? Yes. I'll come with you. No. Maggie checked her knife. The settlements need you. The evacuation needs experienced fighters to lead the groups, protect the vulnerable. I work better alone anyway. Maggie. Remy's voice stopped her. 3 years ago, when Sarah died, when my daughter was killed, you told me that grief didn't have to mean giving up, that I could channel that pain into protecting others, into making sure no one else lost what I'd lost. I remember. You gave me a purpose when I had none, gave me a reason to keep fighting. He pressed something into her hand, a small carved wolf, worn smooth from years of handling. That was Sarah's. She carried it everywhere. Said it made her brave. Take it, let it make you brave too. Maggie's fingers closed around the carving, her vision blurring. Thank you. Bring him back. And bring yourself back too. We need people like you. People who still believe in saving one person when the whole world is burning. She embraced him briefly, then turned and ran. Into the forest, toward the city, toward danger and probable death, toward Damien. Meanwhile, in the depths of the High Court's holding cells, Damien regained consciousness to the smell of blood and stone and despair. His head pounded, his side burned. And when he tried to move, chains rattled, heavy iron shackles binding his wrists to the wall behind him. The cell was small, dark, carved from stone deep beneath the court. No windows, no light except the torch burning in the corridor outside, and no way out except through the locked door. He'd been in these cells before, had sentenced people to them, had walked past them countless times without really thinking about the humans inside, about what it meant to be caged, helpless, waiting for judgment. The irony wasn't lost on him. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Victor entered, holding a lantern, his expression calm and almost regretful. You're awake. Good. We have much to discuss. I have nothing to say to you. You will. Victor set the lantern down, pulling a chair from the corridor. He sat, studying Damien like a specimen. I trained you, Damien. Taught you everything you know about law, strategy, how to read people. Did you really think I wouldn't know exactly what you'd do, where you'd go? You knew I'd come for the evidence. I counted on it. The bait was irresistible documents proving the conspiracy, left conveniently accessible. Of course you'd try for them. Of course you'd sacrifice yourself for the mission. Victor smiled. You're predictable, Damien. It's your greatest weakness, and yours is arrogance. Damien's voice was steady despite the pain. You think you've won. But Maggie escaped, with the evidence. By now, runners are spreading the word to every province, every lord who might still serve actual justice rather than personal ambition. True, which is why we moved up the timeline. The guard is already moving on the Thornwood. By dawn, every rogue settlement will be ashes, every witness dead. The evidence means nothing if there's no one left to corroborate it. Damien's blood went cold. You can't. That's 400 people. Children. Families. That's 400 problems solved. Victor leaned forward. But there's still a way to save some of them. Tell me the settlement locations. The hidden evacuation routes, the places they'd run if attacked. Give me that information, and I'll order the guard to take prisoners instead of kill on sight. Some will die, of course. But some will live. That's better than none. You're lying. Perhaps, but you'll never know unless you tell me. Victor's expression remained calm. Think about it, Damien. You could save lives, hundreds of lives. All you have to do is betray people who were never truly yours anyway. Rogues, criminals, people who rejected everything we stand for. Everything you stand for, Damien corrected. They rejected tyranny. Corruption, a system that murders its own king to maintain power. I'd reject that too. In fact, I already did. Then you'll die here, in this cell, knowing you could have saved them and chose principle over pragmatism. Damien met his former mentor's eyes. I choose principle over murder, over genocide, over everything you've become, and I'll make that choice every time, even if it costs me everything. Victor stood slowly. I'm disappointed. I truly hoped you'd see reason, hoped you'd understand that sometimes the greater good requires difficult choices. The greater good doesn't include mass murder, doesn't it? Victor moved toward the door. History is written by survivors, Damien. And when this is over, when the kingdom is unified under proper leadership, no one will remember the rogues. No one will mourn them. They'll just be a footnote, a problem that was solved. People will remember. Maggie will make sure of it. The evidence will spread. The truth always does. The truth is whatever we say it is. Victor paused at the door. I'll give you some time to reconsider. Think about those children in the Thornwood, about the families, about whether your principles are worth their lives. I'll return in a few hours, and we'll see if you've found wisdom. He left, taking the lantern. Darkness swallowed the cell. Damien sat in the blackness, chains cutting into his wrists, pain throbbing through his body. He thought about Haven, about Maya with her bright eyes and innocent questions, about Elder Maria's pragmatic wisdom, about Remy's grief and Lena's caution and all the ordinary people just trying to survive in a world that wanted them dead. He thought about Maggie, running through the forest, desperate to reach the settlements in time, carrying the weight of their evidence and their hope. He hoped she made it, hoped she found safety, hoped she didn't do something stupid like try to rescue him. Because Victor was right about one thing, Damien was predictable, but so was Maggie. And if he knew her at all, she wasn't scattering into the forest with the others. She was coming back. For him, the thought should have brought comfort. Instead, it filled him with dread. Don't come back, he whispered into the darkness. Please, Maggie, don't come back. Just survive. Just live. That's all I need. But he knew she wouldn't listen. She never did. Maggie reached the city as the moon climbed toward its peak. 4 hours until dawn. 4 hours until the guard reached the Thornwood. 4 hours to break into the most secure prison in the kingdom and rescue someone everyone would be watching. No pressure. She circled the high court, watching the patrols, counting guards, looking for weaknesses. Security had tripled since earlier tonight. Every entrance was guarded, every window watched. But they were watching for external threats, for rogues attacking from outside. They weren't watching for someone already inside the system. Maggie smiled grimly and moved toward the servants' entrance, the same one they'd used hours ago. It would be locked now, secured, but she had tools, had skills, and she had something Victor didn't expect. She had nothing left to lose. The lock took 3 minutes to pick, longer than she'd like, but still acceptable. She slipped inside, into the familiar service corridors. This time, she moved with singular purpose. No caution, no hesitation, just speed and determination. The holding cells were deep beneath the court. She'd never been there, had never needed to, but Damien had described the layout during their planning, had talked about the security, the procedures, the rotation schedules. She reached the stairwell leading down. 2 guards at the top. Time for the thorn root powder. She waited until their attention was elsewhere, then moved with a speed that would have impressed even Remy. 1 guard down a precise strike to the pressure point at his neck. The other turned, shocked, reaching for his weapon. She caught his arm, twisted, drove her knee into his stomach. As he doubled over, she pressed the thorn root powder against his face. He breathed it in reflexively, then collapsed. The first guard was stirring. She gave him a dose too. Within seconds, both were unconscious, their breathing slow but steady. They'd wake in 4 hours with headaches and no memory of what happened. She dragged them into a side corridor, took 1 guard's keys, and descended the stairs. The holding cells were a maze of stone corridors and locked doors. She moved quickly, checking each cell, looking for, there. Damien sat slumped against the wall, chains binding his wrists, blood dried on his face. But alive. He was alive. Damien, she whispered urgently. Damien, wake up. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her with difficulty. Maggie? No, you can't be here. You need to. Don't talk, save your strength. She worked the lock on his cell door with the guard's keys. It clicked open. I'm getting you out. Victor's watching. This is a trap. I don't care. She moved to his chains, working the locks. I'm not leaving you here to die. The settlements are scattering as we speak. Elder Maria has protocol scatter in motion. By the time the guard reaches the Thornwood, there'll be no one to find. Everyone will be dispersed into the deep forest, small groups, impossible to track. The chains fell away. Damien sagged forward, and Maggie caught him. Can you walk? Yes, I think so. Good, because we need to move fast. The guards I took down won't stay unconscious forever. She helped him stand, supporting his weight. He was heavier than expected, his body weak from blood loss, and whatever Victor had done to him. They moved into the corridor, heading back toward the stairs. Too easy. This was too easy. The thought had barely formed when lights blazed to life around them. Guards appeared from every direction, 12, 24, surrounding them completely. And at the center, Victor stood smiling. Hello, Maggie. Welcome back. I've been waiting for you. Chapter 8. The Price of Truth. Damien felt Maggie tense beside him, her body coiling like a spring. He knew what she was thinking. Calculate the odds, find the opening, fight their way through. But there were too many guards, too many weapons. And he was too weak to be anything but a liability in a fight. They'd lost. Don't. He whispered to her. Don't fight. Not yet. Wise advice, Victor said, stepping forward. Though I'm surprised you're giving it. I thought you'd learned by now that Maggie doesn't take orders well. It's one of her more charming qualities. You knew I'd come back, Maggie said flatly. Of course. You're predictable too, in your own way. Victor gestured, and 2 guards moved forward to restrain them. Damien sacrificed himself for you. How could you not return the favor? It's almost romantic, almost tragic, definitely foolish. The guards chained them both not to the walls this time, but to each other, wrist to wrist, close enough that they couldn't move independently. A deliberate choice. Victor wanted them to feel their shared helplessness. The guard reached the Thornwood an hour ago, Victor continued conversationally. They found nothing. Empty settlements, cold fires, not a single soul. His expression darkened. Your protocol scatter. Clever, inconvenient, but ultimately futile. They'll search for weeks and find nothing, Maggie said. The forest is too large. The group's too scattered. You've lost, Victor. You just don't know it yet. Have I? Victor pulled a document from his coat, one of the files Maggie had taken. "This is excellent evidence. Very damning. Proof of assassination, conspiracy, planned genocide. In the hands of the right people, it could indeed destroy everything the Council has built." "Then you've already lost," Damien said. "Except for one small problem." Victor held the document over the torch burning on the wall. The paper caught fire instantly. "Evidence only matters if it exists, and if everyone who knows the truth is dead or discredited." He dropped the burning paper, watching it turn to ash. "The documents you took? I have copies, yes, but I also have the ability to make them disappear. And you two? You're the only witnesses who actually matter. Everyone else is just rogues, criminals, people whose word means nothing. The outer provinces," Maggie started, "will receive carefully edited versions of events. The king died of natural illness. The rogues were harboring dangerous criminals and resisted lawful arrest. The guard acted appropriately. Tragic, but necessary." Victor's smile was cold. "Without you two to contradict the official story. That's all anyone will ever know." Damien felt the chains cutting into his wrists, felt Maggie's pulse through the metal, connecting them fast, angry, desperate. They'd come so far, risked everything, and Victor was going to erase it all, like it had never happened. "So kill us," Maggie said. "Get it over with." "Oh, I will, but not yet." Victor moved closer, studying them both. "First, I want you to understand something. I want you to see what happens when idealism meets reality." He gestured, and guards brought forward a small mirror, polished silver, reflecting their faces. Damien saw himself bloodied, beaten, chained. Saw Maggie beside him, defiant even in captivity. "Look at yourselves," Victor said softly. "Two people who believed they could change the world. Who thought truth and justice were enough. Who sacrificed everything for principles that, in the end, meant nothing." "They mean everything," Damien countered. "Even if we die, even if you erase the evidence, the truth still exists. People in the Thornwood know. The outer provinces have been contacted. Seeds have been planted. Seeds that will never grow, because I'm going to salt the earth." Victor turned to the captain of the guards. "Send word to Commander Gideon. Increase the search in the Thornwood. No more capture orders, kill on sight. Every rogue found is to be executed immediately. And double the rewards for information. Someone will betray them. Someone always does." "No." Maggie lunged forward, but the chains held her back. "They're innocent, their families, their problems, and I'm solving them." Victor returned his attention to Damien. "This is your fault, you know. If you'd just stayed quiet, stayed loyal, none of this would be happening. The rogues would have been eliminated cleanly, quickly. But you had to make it complicated, had to make it personal." "I made it human," Damien said. "Something you forgot how to be a long time ago." Victor's expression hardened. "Take them to the courtyard. Public execution. Dawn. I want everyone to see what happens to traitors." The guards dragged them from the cells, up the stairs, through corridors Damien had walked freely just days ago. Everything looked different now. The marble floors he'd admired were stained with blood from previous prisoners. The tapestries he'd thought beautiful were covering cracked, decaying walls. The whole edifice of the High Court was rotting from within, and he'd been too blind to see it. They emerged into the courtyard, the same courtyard where Maggie had escaped hours earlier. Now, it was filled with people. Guards, servants, officials, an audience for their deaths. A raised platform stood at the center. Execution grounds. Damien had seen executions before. Had authorized them, even, as part of his judicial duties. But he'd never truly considered what it meant: the terror, the finality, the absolute helplessness of standing on that platform knowing your life was about to end. Now he knew. They were forced onto the platform. The chains were attached to a post, keeping them upright, visible to everyone. Victor addressed the crowd, his voice carrying easily in the pre-dawn darkness. "Citizens of Valdris, we are gathered to witness justice. These two traitors, former Judge Franklin Gray and the rogue Maggie, conspired against the crown. They spread lies about our beloved king's natural death. They aided and abetted criminals. They betrayed everything our kingdom stands for. The crowd was silent. Some faces showed approval, others showed doubt. But no one spoke. No one objected. At dawn, Victor continued, they will be executed. Let their deaths serve as a reminder that law and order will always triumph over chaos and treason. He stepped down from the platform, leaving them alone with their guards. The sky was beginning to lighten, maybe an hour until dawn, maybe less. I'm sorry, Maggie whispered. This is my fault. I should have left you. Should have scattered with the others. Now we're both going to die and… Stop. Franklin turned to her as much as the chains allowed. This isn't your fault. You came back for me. No one's ever done that before. Ever fought for me like that. I'm not sorry, even if this is how it ends. How can you not be sorry? We failed. The evidence is gone. The settlements are being hunted. We accomplished nothing. We accomplished everything that mattered. Franklin's voice was steady. We tried. We stood up when everyone else sat down. We chose principle over comfort. And yes, we're going to die for it, but that doesn't make it meaningless. It makes it matter more. Maggie's eyes were wet. I don't want you to die. I don't want you to die either. He managed a smile despite everything. But if I have to die, I'm glad it's beside you. I'm glad the last thing I'll see is someone who believed in truth enough to fight for it. Franklin, I need to tell you something. The words were coming faster now, urgent, because dawn was approaching, and he was running out of time. These past few days, since you saved me, since you showed me what I'd been blind to, you changed my life, changed me, made me see that there's more to living than just surviving, that standing for something matters more than standing for nothing. Don't, Maggie's voice broke. Don't say goodbye. We're not done. We're going to die at dawn. Franklin's voice was gentle but firm. And I need you to know that I don't regret it. Any of it. Not the running, not the fighting, not the sacrifice. Because it meant I got to know you, got to fight beside you. And that's worth more than a lifetime of comfortable lies. Tears were streaming down Maggie's face now. You're an idiot. A noble, principled, infuriating idiot. I know. And she stopped, the words catching in her throat. I care about you, more than I should, more than I wanted to. You matter, Franklin, not just to the mission, not just as some symbol. You matter to me. The sun was cresting the horizon now, golden light spilling across the courtyard. Victor returned to the platform, 2 executioners flanking him. It's time. The executioners moved forward, positioning themselves. One behind Franklin. One behind Maggie. This was it. The end. Franklin looked at Maggie one last time, memorizing her face. The fierce gold eyes, the defiant set of her jaw, the tears she was trying so hard to hide. Close your eyes, he said softly. Don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you afraid. I'm not afraid. But she closed her eyes anyway. So did Franklin. He waited for the blade, waited for the end. Instead, he heard shouting. His eyes snapped open. The courtyard was erupting into chaos. Guards were collapsing, arrows protruding from their armor. More guards were rushing toward the walls, where figures were dropping down, dozens of them, armed, organized. Rogues. From the thornwood. They weren't scattered. They were attacking. What? Victor started. But then someone was on the platform, Remy, his face grim, his blade cutting through the chains holding Franklin and Maggie. Thought you could use some help, Remy said, pressing weapons into their hands. How? Maggie demanded. You were supposed to be evacuating. We were. Until Elder Maria received a message from the outer provinces. Seems your evidence reached them after all. Lord Brennan of the Eastern Territory is mobilizing his forces. He's demanding investigations, arrests, full accounting of the king's death. Remy grinned fiercely. Victor's conspiracy is falling apart. But Maria figured you two would do something stupid, so she sent us to make sure you survived your heroism. More rogues were flooding the courtyard now, not attacking indiscriminately, striking with precision, targeting Victor's loyalists, avoiding civilians. Victor himself was retreating, shouting orders that no one was following. His careful control was disintegrating in real time. "We need to get out of here," Maggie said, pulling Franklin toward the edge of the platform. But Franklin resisted. "No, not yet. Franklin, we need to. Not until we finish this." He turned toward Victor, who was being backed into a corner by a group of rogues led by Lena. "Victor!" The courtyard fell quiet. Everyone stopped, watching. "It's over," Franklin said, his voice carrying across the space. "Your conspiracy has been exposed. The outer provinces know the truth. The rogues know. The city knows. You can't silence everyone. You can't erase what you've done." "The Guard," Victor started. "The Guard serves the kingdom, not you. And Commander Gideon has been arrested by Lord Brennan's forces. They seized him an hour ago, along with the council members who participated in the king's assassination." Remy stepped forward, holding a document with official seals. "This is a warrant for your arrest. Lord Victor Castellan. Charges include regicide, conspiracy to commit genocide, and treason against the crown." Victor stared at the warrant, his face going pale. "This is impossible. I planned for everything. Every contingency. You planned for silence," Franklin interrupted. "For fear, for people being too scared or too apathetic to fight back. But you didn't plan for this." He gestured around the courtyard at the rogues, standing alongside city guards who'd defected, at the civilians who'd stayed to witness the execution, now cheering for their would-be victims. "You didn't plan for people caring enough to risk everything, for truth mattering more than fear. We had justice on our side," Victor said desperately. "Order. Law. The rogues are criminals. We are people." Maggie's voice cut through his protests. "We are families. We are citizens of this kingdom who chose to live differently, and that shouldn't be a death sentence. The fact that you tried to make it one, that's the real crime." Guards loyal to the actual law, rather than Victor's corruption, moved forward, placing manacles on Victor's wrists. He didn't resist, just stared at Franklin with something that might have been disappointment, or might have been grudging respect. "You are always too idealistic," Victor said quietly. "I tried to teach you that the world doesn't work on principles. But you never learned." "No," Franklin agreed. "I learned something better. I learned that principles are the only thing that make the world worth saving." They took Victor away. The crowd dispersed slowly, processing what they'd witnessed. A conspiracy exposed. A genocide prevented. Justice, real justice, actually prevailing. It felt surreal. Franklin swayed on his feet, exhaustion and blood loss finally catching up. Maggie caught him, supporting his weight. "Okay, now we can go," she said, a hint of her usual sarcasm returning. "Good, because I think I'm about to pass out." "Don't you dare. Not after that dramatic speech. You need to stay conscious long enough to see that it actually mattered." "Did it matter?" Maggie looked around the courtyard at the rogues being treated by city healers, at guards removing their weapons in solidarity, at civilians offering water and food to the people they'd been taught to fear. "Yeah," she said softly. "I think it did." Elder Maria appeared, flanked by Rowan and Lena. "The settlements are being recalled. Everyone's coming back. And Lord Brennan has guaranteed protection, full citizenship status for every rogue willing to register with the new government." "New government?" Franklin asked. "The council is dissolved. The provincial lords are forming a coalition to govern until proper elections can be held. It's messy. It's complicated. But it's legitimate." Maria smiled, rare, genuine. "You did it. Both of you. You actually did it." "We had help," Maggie said. "So did everyone who ever changed anything important." Maria looked at Franklin. "What will you do now, former Judge Ashford?" "The new coalition is looking for people with legal expertise, people who actually understand justice. You could have a position, authority, power again." Franklin was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he looked at Maggie. "What are you going to do? Go back to the Thornwood? Help rebuild? Maybe actually stay in one place for more than a week?" She met his eyes. "Why?" "Because I think I'm done with authority and power. I think I'd rather help people directly. Make sure the new system doesn't become as corrupt as the old one, and I think—" He took her hand. "I think I'd like to do that with you. If you'll have me." Maggie stared at him. "You want to live in the Thornwood? You? The man who spent 17 years in marble halls? I spent 17 years being comfortable and wrong. I'd rather spend however long I have left, being uncomfortable and right." He squeezed her hand. "Besides, you still owe me a tour of the deep forest. You promised." "I never promised that." "You implied it." "I did no such thing. Are you two going to argue or kiss?" Remy called out. "Because we're taking bets and I need to know which one to put my money on." Maggie laughed, genuine, surprised, joyful. Then she pulled Franklin close and kissed him. Not desperate or urgent or born from adrenaline, just honest, real, a promise of something more than just survival. When they pulled apart, Franklin was smiling. "So that's a yes?" "That's a yes, you idiot." Maggie rested her forehead against his. "But if you slow me down in the forest, I'm leaving you behind." "Fair enough." The sun was fully risen now, bathing the courtyard in golden light. A new day, a new beginning, not perfect, not easy. The kingdom had years of work ahead, rebuilding trust, reforming laws, healing wounds that ran generations deep. But it was possible now, because two people had refused to stay silent, had chosen truth over comfort, had risked everything for people they didn't even know. And sometimes, that was enough to change the world. "Come on," Maggie said, pulling Franklin toward the courtyard exit. "Let's go home." "To the Thornwood?" "To the Thornwood." Franklin followed her, limping but determined. Behind them, the high court stood against the morning sky, no longer a symbol of absolute power, but just a building. Stone and mortar and the ghosts of past mistakes. Ahead, the Thornwood waited. Not perfect, not easy, but honest, real. A place where people chose their own paths and looked after each other. A place worth fighting for. A place worth calling home. 3 months later, a messenger arrived at Haven, carrying a sealed document. Elder Maria read it, smiled, and called for Franklin and Maggie. "The new coalition has officially recognized the Thornwood settlements as autonomous communities under kingdom protection," she announced. "Full citizenship for all residents. Freedom to govern ourselves according to our own laws, as long as they don't conflict with kingdom law. And this." She handed another document to Franklin. "This is a request. The coalition wants to establish a new court system, one that actually serves justice. They're asking you to help design it." Franklin looked at the document, then at Maggie. "What do you think?" "I think you'd be good at it. As long as you remember what you learned. As long as you never forget what it felt like to be on the other side of the system." "I won't forget." He took her hand. "How could I? You won't let me." "Damn right I won't." Elder Maria cleared her throat. "There's one more thing. The coalition has officially pardoned all rogues. Clean records. Fresh starts. Maggie, that means you're free. You can go anywhere, be anyone. No more running, no more hiding." Maggie was quiet for a moment. Then she looked around Haven at the rebuilt homes, at the children playing, at the community that had become her family. "I'm already where I want to be," she said simply. "I'm already who I want to be." "Good." Maria stood. "Then get to work. We have a kingdom to rebuild, and I expect both of you to help." They did. Franklin worked with the coalition, helping design a justice system that prioritized truth over power, rehabilitation over punishment, protecting the vulnerable over protecting the comfortable. He traveled between the Thornwood and the cities, bridging the gap between two worlds that had been enemies for too long. Maggie continued her work helping refugees, moving supplies, connecting communities. But now she had help, now she had partners. And most importantly, she had Franklin, working beside her, learning from her, building something better together. They argued, often, about strategy, about principles, about whether Franklin's idealism or Maggie's pragmatism was the right approach. But they always came back to the same truth. They were better together than apart. Stronger, more complete. And on quiet evenings, when the work was done and the world felt manageable for a moment, they would sit together and remember the desperate run through the city, remember the infiltration, Remember the moment on the execution platform when they'd thought it was over. Remember that they'd chosen each other, and kept choosing each other. Every single day. Do you ever regret it? Maggie asked one evening, sitting beside Franklin on the edge of Haven, watching the sun set through the trees. Giving up your old life? Your position? Your comfortable existence? Every day. Franklin said honestly. Maggie turned to him, startled. He smiled. I regret that I didn't do it sooner, that I spent 17 years blind when I could have spent them actually helping people. But regret this? He gestured to Haven, to the life they'd built. Never, not for a second. Good answer. Maggie leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. Because you're stuck with me now. No take-backs. I wouldn't take it back even if I could. Even though I'm stubborn? Especially because you're stubborn. Even though I argue with everything you say? Especially because you argue. It keeps me honest. Even though I dragged you into the most dangerous situation of your life? Especially because you saved me. Franklin turned to face her. You saved me, Maggie. Not just from the guards. From a life that looked successful but was empty. From believing in systems instead of people. She kissed him, cutting off his words. You talk too much. I'm a lawyer. It's what I do. Former judge. Current pain in my ass. Is that your way of saying you love me? Maggie pulled back, looking at him seriously. They hadn't said the words yet. Hadn't needed to, with everything else happening. But now, in this quiet moment, with the world finally at peace. Yes, she said simply. That's my way of saying I love you. You noble, idealistic, infuriating man. I love you too, Franklin replied. You fierce, complicated, impossible woman. We're quite a pair. The worst. The best. They sat together as night fell over the thornwood. Two people who'd lost everything and found something better. Who'd fought impossible odds and won. Who'd chosen truth over comfort and love over fear. The kingdom was healing. Slowly. Imperfectly. But healing. And in a small clearing in the forest, two people who'd started as enemies and become partners, watched the stars appear, and knew whatever challenges came next, they'd face them together. That was enough. That was everything. Epilogue. Voices that don't run alone. 6 months later, the morning sun filtered through the canopy of the thornwood, casting dappled patterns across the ground. Franklin woke to the sound of children laughing outside, a sound that still felt miraculous after everything that had happened. Maggie was already awake, standing by the window of their small home, watching the settlement come to life. She'd let her hair down, something she rarely did, and in the early light, she looked softer, more at peace than he'd ever seen her. You're staring, she said without turning around. I'm appreciating. That's a fancy word for staring. But she smiled. The delegation from the Western Province arrives today. Elder Maria wants you to brief them on the new judicial framework. I know. Franklin stood, moving to stand beside her. And you're leading the security detail. Someone has to make sure the provincial lords don't get lost in the forest. Or eaten by bears. Or decide they don't like rogues after all and need a reminder of why that's a bad idea. Always so optimistic. Always so realistic. Maggie turned to face him. 6 months ago, we were on an execution platform. Today, provincial lords are coming here to learn from us. It still feels surreal. Good surreal or bad surreal? Good. Definitely good. She kissed him quickly. But also terrifying. What if we mess this up? What if the new system becomes just as corrupt as the old one? What if then we fix it, again, as many times as necessary? Franklin took her hands. That's what we do now. We don't build something perfect and walk away. We stay. We keep working. We keep fighting for it. When did you become the optimist and I become the worrier? About the same time you taught me that idealism without action is just fantasy, and I taught you that cynicism without hope is just surrender. Maggie laughed. We're becoming the same person. That's horrifying. Horrifying or inevitable. Both. Outside, someone called Maggie's name. She sighed, pulling away. Duty calls. The delegation won't secure itself. I'll see you tonight? If the lords don't try anything stupid. If they do, I'll see you when I'm done explaining why that was a mistake." She left, and Franklin dressed quickly, pulling on the simple clothes he'd grown accustomed to. No more formal robes. No more symbols of authority. Just practical clothing for practical work. He stepped outside into Haven's morning bustle. The settlement had grown in the past 6 months. New structures, new families, people who'd heard about the autonomous communities and wanted to be part of something different. Maya ran past, chasing her younger brother, both shrieking with laughter. She waved at Franklin without stopping. "Judge Franklin!" a voice called. He turned to find Rowan approaching, carrying a stack of documents. The petition from the southern settlement. They want to establish a formal trade agreement with Valdris. "Needs your review." "I'm not a judge anymore, Rowan. You're our legal advisor." "Close enough." Rowan grinned. "Besides, you'll always be Judge Franklin to us. It's respect, not rank." Franklin took the documents, scanning them quickly. "This looks good. Fair terms. Mutual benefit. Tell them they have my approval. But it needs to go through the Settlement Council for final vote, already scheduled for tomorrow." Rowan hesitated. "Franklin, thank you. For everything. My daughter, she's learning to read now. In the new school we built, that wouldn't have happened without you and Maggie fighting for us. It happened because people refused to stay silent. Maggie and I just spoke louder than most. Sometimes that's all it takes." Rowan left, and Franklin continued toward the meeting hall, where Elder Maria was preparing for the delegation. The building was new, constructed from timber harvested sustainably from the forest. Inside, the walls were covered with maps, documents, the administrative framework of their growing community. "There you are." Maria looked up from her preparations. "The lords should arrive within the hour. I need you to walk them through the judicial reforms. Emphasis on transparency, community input, and restorative justice, rather than purely punitive measures. I've prepared a presentation." "But Maria, are we sure this is a good idea? Opening ourselves up to scrutiny this soon?" "We're not opening ourselves to scrutiny. We're inviting collaboration." Maria's expression was firm. "The old kingdom died 6 months ago. What we're building now requires trust, transparency, shared governance. If we hide, we become what they feared. We were isolated, suspicious, unwilling to engage. And if they decide they don't like what they see, then we convince them, the same way we've convinced everyone else. With truth, evidence, and the undeniable fact that our way works." She smiled slightly. "Besides, we have Maggie. If the lords get difficult, she'll terrify them into compliance. That's what I'm afraid of." "Don't be. Maggie knows when to intimidate and when to charm. She's learned diplomacy, in her own unique way." The delegation arrived precisely on time. Lord Brennan of the Eastern Province, Lady Aldrich of the West, and Lord Corvin of the South. 3 of the most powerful figures in the new coalition, here to see the Thornwood settlements for themselves. Maggie met them at Haven's border, along with a security detail that managed to look both professional and subtly threatening. Franklin watched from the meeting hall as she guided them through the settlement, pointing out the school, the medical center, the community gardens, showing them not chaos, but organization, not criminals, but families. When they reached the meeting hall, Lord Brennan was smiling. "This is impressive, Elder Maria. Truly. When the report said you'd established fully functioning autonomous communities, I'll admit I was skeptical, but seeing it in person." "We're not perfect," Maria said. "We have disputes, challenges, growing pains. But we're addressing them through community consensus, transparent processes, and genuine care for every member. No one is disposable here." "A philosophy the old kingdom could have learned from," Lady Aldrich observed. She turned to Franklin. "Judge Ashford, your reputation precedes you. They say you gave up everything to expose the corruption." "I gave up a lie to live in truth," Franklin corrected. "And I'm not a judge anymore." "That's not what I hear. The coalition has been reviewing your judicial reforms, your proposed framework for the new court system." Lord Brennan pulled out a document. "We're prepared to adopt it, kingdom-wide, with you overseeing the implementation." Franklin stared at the document. his work, his vision for a justice system that actually served justice. Accepted, validated, about to become reality across the entire kingdom. There's a condition, Lord Corvin added. You'd need to return to Valdris. Establish the new high court there. Train the judges, oversee the cases, ensure the system takes root properly. That would mean leaving the Thornwood, Franklin said quietly. For a time, yes. Though you could split your time, maintain connections to both communities. Lord Brennan leaned forward. Judge Ashford Franklin, we need people we can trust in positions of authority. People who've proven they'll choose principle over power. You're one of the few people in this kingdom with that credential. Franklin looked at Maria, who gave him an encouraging nod. Then at Maggie, standing by the door, her expression carefully neutral. Can I have time to consider? He asked. Of course, but we need an answer soon. The new court system launches in 3 months. The delegation stayed through the afternoon, touring the other settlements, meeting with community leaders, asking questions. By the time they left at sunset, they seemed genuinely impressed. You've built something remarkable here, Lady Aldrich told Maria. Not just a community, but a model. I hope the rest of the kingdom can learn from it. After they left, Franklin found Maggie on the edge of the settlement, sitting on a fallen log, watching the forest. You should do it, she said without preamble. Take the position, build the new court system. It would mean being apart. I'd be in Valdris most of the time, and you'd be here. So, we've survived worse than distance. She turned to face him. Franklin, this is your dream. A justice system that actually serves justice. You can't turn that down because of me. I'm not turning it down because of you. I'm considering turning it down because of us. He sat beside her. These past 6 months, building this life with you, it's been the happiest I've ever been. I don't want to lose that. You won't lose it. We'll adapt. Visit when we can. Use those message crystals the coalition developed. Make it work. Maggie took his hand. I love you. Which means, I want you to do the things that matter to you. Even if they're complicated. Even if they require sacrifice. When did you become so wise? I was always wise. You were just too busy being principled to notice. He laughed, pulling her close. If I do this, you have to promise to visit. Keep me honest. Remind me why we fought so hard to change things. I promise. Though I make no promises about behaving appropriately in formal court settings, I wouldn't expect anything else. They sat together as night fell, making plans, discussing logistics, building a future that was complicated and imperfect, but theirs. 3 months later, the new High Court, Valdris. The building was different now. The marble floors remained, but the oppressive formality was gone. Windows had been opened, letting in light and air. The execution platform had been dismantled, replaced with a community forum where citizens could voice concerns directly, and at the center, in what had once been Victor's office, Franklin sat reviewing cases. Not alone, beside him sat 3 other judges, all carefully selected, all trained in the new framework. Truth over power. Restoration over punishment. People over systems. A knock at the door. Come in, Franklin called. Maggie entered, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the formal court building. I hate it here. It smells like old power and older lies. It smells like cleaning solution and fresh paint. Same thing. She dropped into a chair. The delegation from the northern province is requesting a tour of the Thornwood settlements. Maria wants to know if you can come. Provide the judicial perspective. When? Next week. 3 days. You'd miss the treaty signing ceremony. Franklin considered. The treaty signing was important, but so was maintaining connection to the Thornwood. I'll come. Lord Brennan can handle the ceremony without me. You sure? This is a big event. So is the northern province potentially joining the autonomous community framework. That's bigger. He stood, moving to her. Besides, I miss you. 3 weeks is too long. Agreed. Though watching you be all judge-like is entertaining, you get this stern expression when you're reviewing cases. Very authoritative. Is that attractive? Disturbingly so. I'm ashamed of myself. He kissed her, and for a moment, the weight of responsibility lifted. They were just Franklin and Maggie, Two people who'd found each other in the chaos and decided to stay. "How are things in Haven?" he asked. "Good. Maya's reading at a 5th level now. Remy's training a new group of security volunteers. Elder Maria is negotiating with the Eastern Province about expanding the trade agreements." Maggie smiled. "We're thriving, Franklin. Really thriving. And part of that is because of the legal protections you helped establish. People feel safe now, protected. That's all I wanted. For people to trust that the system would actually serve them. Mission accomplished then." A junior clerk entered with more documents. Franklin sighed, returning to his desk. "I have about 4 more hours of work. I'll wait. I brought a book." Maggie settled into the chair, pulling out a worn volume. "Take your time. I'm not going anywhere." And she didn't. She stayed while he worked, occasionally making sarcastic comments about the legal language or asking questions that forced him to explain his reasoning more clearly. Her presence made the work easier, reminded him why it mattered. When they finally left the High Court that evening, walking through Valdres toward the inn where Maggie was staying, the city felt different, more open, more hopeful. Citizens nodded to them in recognition, not fear or suspicion, but respect. Acknowledgement of what they'd done. "Do you think it'll last?" Maggie asked. "The changes we made? Or will it all slide back to corruption eventually?" "Probably some sliding. Systems require constant vigilance, but I think we've built something strong enough to resist most of it." Franklin looked at her. "Especially if we keep fighting for it. If people like you and me refuse to get comfortable, refuse to accept slow decay, so we're going to be fighting forever." "Probably." "Great. I love a lifetime commitment to exhausting struggle." "You're being sarcastic, but I think you actually do love it." Maggie was quiet for a moment. Then, "Yeah, I actually do. Because fighting for something real is better than accepting something false, even if it's harder, even if it never ends. That's what I love about you. My stubborn refusal to accept mediocrity, your absolute commitment to truth. No matter the cost." They reached the inn. Maggie stopped, looking up at the High Court in the distance, illuminated against the night sky. "They thought silencing one judge would bury the truth," she said softly. "But they were wrong." Franklin finished the thought. "The truth found a voice. And voices don't run alone anymore." Is that going to be the official motto of the new justice system? Because it's kind of cheesy. It's perfect and you know it. It's perfectly cheesy. They went inside, and the evening passed in comfortable companionship, planning their trip to the northern province, discussing cases and community issues, building the complicated, imperfect, beautiful life they'd chosen. 1 year later, the anniversary of the king's assassination and the exposure of the conspiracy was marked with a formal ceremony in Valdres. But the real celebration happened in the Thornwood, where the communities gathered to remember, to honor the fallen, and to celebrate their survival. Franklin stood before the assembled crowd, hundreds of people from dozens of settlements, and felt the weight of the moment. 1 year ago, he began, we stood on an execution platform, condemned by a system that valued order over justice, power over truth. We should have died that day. By every logical calculation, we should have failed. The crowd was silent, listening, but we didn't fail, because when we stood on that platform, we weren't alone. The Thornwood came. The provincial lords listened. The people of Valdres chose truth over comfortable lies. He paused. We didn't change the world because we were special. We changed it because we refused to stay silent. Because we believed that speaking truth even when it cost everything mattered more than survival. Maggie stood beside him, adding her voice. We lost people. Elian, whose death started my path to rebellion. Sarah, Remy's daughter. The king himself, murdered for trying to do right. We can't bring them back. But we can honor them by continuing to fight for what they died for. Justice. Truth. A world where people matter more than power. Elder Maria stepped forward. Today we remember the past. Tomorrow we build the future. And every day after, we choose again, truth or comfort, justice or order, people or systems. May we always choose rightly. The ceremony continued, with songs, stories, remembrances, but the moment that mattered most came at the end, when Maya, now 12 years old, confident and bright, stood before the crowd. "I'm alive because Judge Franklin and Maggie fought for us," she said, her voice clear. "Because they chose truth when lies would have been easier. Because they risked everything when most people risk nothing. I'm going to be a judge when I grow up. Not the old kind. The new kind. The kind that actually serves justice. And when I am, I'm going to remember this day. Remember that change is possible. That truth matters. That speaking up, even when you're scared, can change the world." Applause erupted. Not polite, formal applause. Real, thunderous, joyful celebration. After the ceremony, Franklin and Maggie walked through Haven, greeting people, accepting thanks and well wishes. They ended up at their home, expanded now, with a small office where Franklin could work when he was in the Thornwood. "Maya wants to be a judge," Maggie said, smiling. "Your influence. Our influence. You taught her that fighting for what's right matters. I just showed her one way to do that. Just complete in. She's going to be formidable. She already is." They sat on their small porch, watching the settlement settle into evening routines. A year ago, this hadn't existed, this peace, this community, this hope. "Do you ever think about that moment?" Maggie asked. "On the platform? When we thought it was over? Every day." "Me too. And you know what I think about most?" "What?" "That we were ready to die for this, for these people, for the truth, and I wouldn't change that. Even knowing now that we survived, even knowing it worked out, I wouldn't change being willing to die for something that mattered." Franklin took her hand. "Neither would I. We're quite a pair. Two people who'd rather die for principle than live in comfort. The best kind of pair. The most exhausting kind of pair. Same thing." Maggie laughed, leaning against him. "I love you, you impossible man. I love you too, you fierce, complicated, perfect woman. I'm not perfect. No. But you're real, and that's better." The sun set over the Thornwood, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere in Valdres, the new High Court was preparing for tomorrow's cases. Somewhere in the provinces, lords were implementing reforms. Somewhere across the kingdom, people were learning that truth mattered, that justice was possible, that voices raised together could change the world. And in a small settlement in the Thornwood, two people who'd lost everything and gained something better sat together, watching the stars appear. They'd fought impossible odds and won. They'd spoken truth to power and survived. They'd chosen each other, and kept choosing each other, every single day. That was the real victory. Not the conspiracy exposed or the system reformed, but the connection forged in fire, tested by trial, and proven unbreakable. They thought silencing one judge would bury the truth. They were wrong. The truth found a voice. And voices that spoke together, that fought together, that loved together, those voices didn't run alone anymore. Those voices changed everything. Subscribe if stories about ordinary people refusing to stay silent and changing the world because of it are the stories you want to keep hearing. Because Franklin and Maggie proved that one voice speaking truth can start a revolution, but it takes an audience willing to listen to make it last. Drop a comment telling us, what would you risk everything for? Your answer might inspire someone else to find their courage.